No, you're not seeing double. I'm back here once again because there is a lot to talk about here in the world of sports, and especially if you're a WWE fan, AEW, wrestling, NXT, and even CM Punk, which myself and Randy Dillon, we kind of got it wrong here. We're going to talk about it here and some. And as I alluded to, he's here with us once again. You've been hearing him throughout the week on sportswireradio.org, where he's been talking about all things related to the Vancouver Canucks, the surprising start from those Canucks. He is also the co-host of the Hockey Fan Chat. He's also dabbled a little bit in the world of professional wrestling, training for a brief period, but he's our Sportswire Radio analyst. His name is Mr. Randy Dillon. Randy, happy Friday, and how are you, my friend?
Tom, I'm doing great. Great to be back. 2 weeks ago, I said it, CM Punk will not be in a WWE ring. The next night, I was in awe.
Well, as CM Punk's shirt famously was on SmackDown that he was wearing, hell froze over. It froze over. It definitely did. I mean, so what do you make of it? Obviously, you caught the promo on Raw last week, and people were kind of like, it's not the Punk we know. It's not controversial. And tonight he kind of teased upon it a little bit, but we're now doing this kind of dance here. Is he going to Raw? Is he going to SmackDown? They threw in NXT because obviously NXT has a show tomorrow, but I mean, like, what do you think happens now with CM Punk, and how do you like how he's been re-brought into the fold here in WWE?
So going back to his promo last week on Raw, I know there was a lot of people upset.
People were like, it's not controversial. He didn't mention the Young Bucks. He didn't mention Jericho. He didn't mention Jungle Boy. And, and they were kind of like, well, now he's the happy-go-lucky Punk, because he kind of referenced that more or less.
No, absolutely. I think one, definitely time, because and also overshadowed the return of Randy Orton on Raw. We gotta think about that. I gotta admit, the 2 weeks ago on Raw was actually a very good episode. It's unfortunately he didn't get the time on Raw, but I think what he said was kind of true in the first part, saying that it took him a while to get back to feel like WWE is the place for him. This is different. He's changed.
Oh, it's a much different environment. He left almost 10 years ago. You can't. I mean, I know JBL was saying, well, he's our decade generation, but this generation of WWE fans in the universe, I mean, I don't really know what they know of him because he's been gone so long.
Absolutely. And then everyone's saying, he wasn't controversial. Listen, we've seen the promo thrown on AEW when you can throw fire to the wind, do whatever you want, say whatever. We know that there's going to be no reference of the Young Bucks, Jericho, AEW, but he is taking his shots. He's done the lap. He says, I'm here to make money, not friends. You can't do things in 2022.
And he referenced Heyman, that he was the original OG in terms of, Paul having him as his client. He talked about the bloodline. He talked about the Usos. I mean, but, where do you see him? I mean, obviously, Randy Orton's on SmackDown. Got that situation with Nick Aldis. We see where that's going. Randy has also talked about the bloodline. Okay, I mean, we'll play along, but I mean, I just don't see CM Punk. If it was like 2 months before they were going to the new TV deal on CW, I'd say, you know what? Maybe you're onto something, but they have several months until they go on to another network. So, I mean, realistically, just because of everything with Randy, we think, and the bloodline and Roman Reigns, even though CM Punk mentioned him, I would have to think that leaves us going to Raw, no?
He's going to Raw. They need him on Raw for the ratings. If you've not been following the ratings, WWE has been getting dismantled by the NFL this year. There's been talk they're moving Raw, but I don't think you can change it to Thursday, Wednesday night Raw. It doesn't fall.
I know, where are you going to put it? I mean, you got NXT on Tuesdays, AEW is Wednesday. Okay, Thursday you could, but the NFL has a Thursday night prime game. You got SmackDown on Friday, so where are you going to move Raw, I think?
Exactly. I think he's going to go to Raw because I think he'll help bring the ratings up, definitely. And then you kind of got diverse stars all over the place. You got Cody, him, Seth, Drew, and then you got the likes of Rhea.
Priest, you got Judgment Day, you got Dom, Dirty Dom, you got obviously Gunther. So you have an interesting, and by the way, Gunther and CM Punk, what a match that would be. I know they're not going to go that way, but that would be like, to me, the match that would be like the original OG dream match. But yeah, I mean, I think Raw is a diverse roster. I just don't know. If Randy didn't come back, I would say absolutely go to that, even though CM Punk did mention the Royal Rumble and 29 Superstars, and we saw the whole thing with Cody in that exchange about, basically winning it, shooting your shot. But let me throw a complete curveball. I know he said Monday he's going to make his decision, but could you play this the long game by WWE and say, you know what, keep him as a free agent for a while, a la kind of like what The Rock did when he was here for a while? Could you have done that, or you think he has to choose now?
I think he has to choose now because he said in the promo, I'm going to make my decision Monday. I think they could have kind of played the card where they could have said, maybe I'll wait. I'm a free agent, going to pick Raw, SmackDown, maybe once I win the Rumble, once after I've sold 29 other men, then I'll make my decision. But he did say he's going to pick a decision. I think they really want to do this, Seth and CM Punk. And I think
the history's there because Seth basically last year going into WrestleMania basically shot his shot pretty much. He basically shot his load when it came to obviously Mr. CM Punk. So I mean that would certainly make some sense.
Oh, absolutely. Then CM Punk throwing his shot, saying that one guy, he's not the man in his household. He only had the theme song going. So listen, they're taking their shots at each other and they're going to build it up. And the potential of these two main eventing night one of WrestleMania, I could see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely no question about so overall then, and I'm going to come back to Punk in a second. Overall, how do you feel that they've handled his return so far in these appearances? How do you think overall?
I think they've handled it pretty well. Like I said, I think Survivor Series blew everyone out of water. Then Triple H talked about in the press conference, 10 years we've changed. If you haven't grown, changing the 10-year growing, then what are you really doing with your life? And I think everything Punk went going through with AEW and the reports saying near the end of his AEW run before he got fired, he was miserable there with everything that went on. It seems like everyone's happy to have him back. It seems like they're keeping things in line. And I think honestly, he wants to be there. I think at this point, he made the decision. It wasn't WWE didn't approach him. He started the conversation.
Well, this is his last shot. I mean, I guess the only other thing, and we're going to bring in Mr. TBK in a second. We're going to bring him in shortly. I guess the only other thing, I mean, the two ones that come to mind, I guess when Hulk came back in 2002, I don't think it was this ceremonious in terms of just the acrimony. Maybe Brett in 2010, but Brett wasn't in his prime. By the time Brett came back to me, at that point, he was really just a shell of himself. Hulk might be, I guess, then the comparison when he came back.
I would say Sting would be maybe a bigger comparison in 2014 because no one thought.
But even Sting, to me, it was like when he really should have came into WWF was in 2000. WWE was 2005 when he made the decision. When then he was thinking about coming to WWE, but he went to TNA instead. So I mean, I think Hogan, because it was 9 years, the 9 years of the similarities there. I think also in the fact that, maybe it was Hulk. I don't think nowhere said as much as what Punk did, but I think maybe that's the only other one because I think Brett was really past his prime, to be honest, by the time he came back, and it didn't do it for me.
No, but, absolutely.
And I'm going to bring him on here. Speaking of Mr. Santa Claus, ho, 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 he got his early Christmas gift. Mr. Baltimore Kid, how you doing there, my friend?
Doing good. How you doing, boys?
Good.
I'm doing good. We're talking about here one of your favorite topics in the world of wrestling. That's Mr. CM Punk, Mr. Phil Brooks, a.k.a. CM Punk. And, I mean, how do you like Punk has been brought in so far? We were speaking about, I know you caught the conversation in here just before as we get people to join the conversation shortly. I mean, what do you think of Punk and how they've handled his basically return after nearly 10 years?
I think they're doing it right so far. I mean, it's going to be WWE is a fan of the slow build, the slow burn.
Yep, slow burn. There you go. Yep.
So kind of tail ending off of what Randy was saying, as not to further overshadow Randy's return. They're letting Randy get a couple matches in. They're taking their time with figuring out where they want CM Punk to be at. As Randy was saying, I mean, I think the logical choice at this point would be to put him on Raw because I feel like if you put him on SmackDown, then SmackDown is just
becomes a cluster. It becomes, you got Randy already who said he wants the bloodline. I know CM referenced him and he referenced Heyman, but to me, it just doesn't make any sense.
The other thing to add to that is if they were still on Fox, I think Fox would maybe make more of a push to bring him in, but because they're leaving network, it just makes more sense for him at this point to go to Raw.
Okay. All right. Let me say hello to a few people. I'm going to say hello to you earlier because you commented. Hello, Jed. I want to say hello to our lovely, very, very lovely Miss Zena there. How are you doing there, beautiful? She says, good evening, Tom and Randy. And of course, she's in the friendly confines of Brooklyn, New York. And our buddy Ron, who also likes the hat. So overall, then, Punk, okay, but what do we expect from Punk in the ring? You know, he really hasn't wrestled much. I mean, okay, in the last year and a half, what has he had? A handful of matches. We went through this whole thing with AEW, basically didn't have him wrestle at all. They paid him basically not to wrestle. He came back for a little period there, but we really haven't seen much from him in the ring. So what do you guys expect when we see CM Punk eventually kind of ingrain himself in the WWE? What do you guys think?
I really don't know. As people who are in the industry, the professional wrestler, it takes two to tango, and
he hasn't tangled much, though. He hasn't done any tangoing,
and the thing is, who is he going to tangle with, and are they willing to put bygones be bygones? Or
well, we saw KO. I mean, KO basically said a lot about it. Then we saw that kind of weird standoffish, probably real itself. We saw that, okay, Punk was okay with him, but I'm sure, listen, that locker room is probably, you know, he's walking into an environment, you know, I made the comparison to Hogan in 02, but I think Hogan still never was as controversial as Punk. I mean, Hogan was still Hulk Hogan. He built this sport. He was the Babe Ruth. So I think he probably at the end of the day had respect from a lot of guys in the locker room, but I don't think we've seen anything like this, fellas. A guy like him who has not been in this company for over a decade and has said as much as he said. And on top of it, his wife has said so much about this company. So, like, what can we expect from him in the ring is my really big question, gentlemen.
Honestly, you know what? There was a rumor going around that apparently Triple H decided to pull the trigger a little bit early on having CM Punk even return, having him come back.
Yeah, we were on here, gentlemen. Didn't we all say, we don't think so because nobody likes him? And Jericho said a few things about him, and then Jericho had to basically backtrack because of what happened. I mean, we didn't think that, you know, it wasn't going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he made the I don't know if you want to call it a safe play, but I'll call it a safe play. And having CM Punk return in his hometown for a premium pay-per-view, the way they went about it was fantastic. But there again, the rumors circling around is that they were gonna save Punk for the Rumble. So the fact now that they're kind of having him integrate and not exactly calling out, but addressing several different superstars, the way to get him to mix up with all these guys would be to put him in the Rumble. Obviously that's 2 more months away, or no?
A month, like 7
about a month,
weeks.
I would say.
Yeah, 7 weeks. What's today? December 8th. So what's the last week in January? So we're looking at like 50 days, something like that.
Right. So I mean, there's still time, obviously, to have him mix it up a couple matches here and there. But I don't know. Maybe they just let him do what he does best for a while, let him talk, let him build some stuff up, and then we do see him in the Rumble.
Let me ask you guys both this question. As we're here speaking all things related to the world of wrestling with my guys, Randy Dillon and the Baltimore Kid, who's the host of the Be More Talkative podcast. We're on sportswireradio.org, and you can check out our new website in the link below. My name is Reverend Tom Bryce. But let me ask you guys a question. You can answer it any way you want. Randy, you've obviously done some of this. Mr. Baltimore Kid, you've been in a band, so you know the kind of egos and how these things go. Is this a ticking time bomb waiting to happen?
I don't think so, because I think bringing CM Punk, and they've had, even though on the short notice Triple H mentioned, they've had talks with the likes of Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and some of the other veterans in that locker room.
I would think of Bobby Lashley, Rey Mysterio's probably in that discussion. Veteran guys, let's think about it. The guys that have been in this locker room a long time. You know, I would think, obviously, let's say maybe a Finn Balor who knows him pretty well. I would think certainly, let's go and think about other people. Kevin Owens, you obviously mentioned, he had to have been part of the discussion. Sami Zayn before he got injured. You know, you would think about the list of talent that are in the company on both brands. And I think the other one that certainly has to be referenced, because he mentioned him in an interview a couple of days ago, was Shawn Michaels. And Shawn Michaels, he basically endorsed CM Punk maybe more than anybody else. So there had to have been talks with a number of the different top stars who are the veteran stars in that locker room who were probably there. The Usos, CM Punk reference. So he's obviously got a good relationship with them. And then also, obviously, Paul Heyman. So you had to think that these guys, the veteran guys who were there the last time he was in that locker room, they had to give that the endorsement, no?
Oh, absolutely. I have to think if one of those guys kind of said I don't think it's going to work, I think the whole deal would have gone south and he would not have returned. I think all of them probably said that if he's willing to move on, put it behind him, and willing to be a professional and work, let's give it a shot.
Okay, so I think obviously short term, WWE got a huge boost. Obviously, ratings for Raw were the most it's been in I think almost 2 years. Social media engagements were the most earned in the company's history. There's no question. We've talked about this in the past with him in AEW. He gave them, when he was on their shows, their premium shows were the highest drawing ones ever. The ratings when he was on there had the highest rated AEW Dynamite shows. No question. Collision, when he came back, ratings went up. So there's no question that he's a ratings draw. Will it continue to go long term? I don't know, but he is the one guy, and I've said this before, and Randy, we've been together on the air 2.5 years, so 2.5 years in the current Sportswire incarnation that we've been together. He is the one guy that the casual fan that may not watch every Raw, may not watch every SmackDown, Dynamite, Collision, when he's on, people jump out of their seat. He is the one person that's, I would say, left in this sport that has that because he was gone for as long as he was.
No, absolutely. TBK, I'll let you take the floor here.
Yeah. As far as your initial question, Tom,
yeah,
I don't know. I guess time will tell. To be honest, I think the hard part's over. He got the okay from the higher ups. And everybody knows, whether you want to admit it or not, that CM Punk is he's a draw.
Oh, no question. We spoke about it here in the past. Randy and I, 2.5
months. Look at AEW. I think he was one of their highest revenue guys.
He was.
He was the highest revenue guy. I don't think
he was a part of the highest drawed premium live shows. It was him. Nobody else. It wasn't Jericho who drew it. Wasn't Moxley. Wasn't Copeland. Wasn't Sting. Wasn't anybody. Miro they brought in. Christian, Mark Henry. Everybody that they brought in. Saraya. They weren't the draws. It was him. Bottom line.
So I think WWE, or at the very least, Triple H and those guys, is finally doing right by the fans and giving the fans what they want, even at the risk of a CM Punk. I mean, regardless,
Vince wouldn't have made this move. Vince would not have made this move.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Nick Khan, you got to give him credit. And the one thing I got to think as well with CM Punk, they're going to treat him like a main attraction. I don't think they're going to bring him every week. They might give him some odd weeks here and off a lighter schedule.
Didn't you guys hear on X that he was getting a sort of a deal similar to the Shawn Michaels one when he came back, where he wasn't wrestling every house show or something like that? I think that's what I read the other day on X. Yeah. You guys see that?
I would have to think, after everything that going on with AEW, I think he didn't want to be on television every week or doing something and just interacting. I think they realized his personality is really similar to Brock Lesnar in the way he works with backstage, where he in the opposite, where he can work with people, but he does not have a filter when it comes to people.
I think his personality in some ways is worse than Brock, because you look at Brock and go, okay, he was the UFC world champion. He tried out to be a National Football League player, and he's basically Brock Lesnar. Whereas Punk, you look at him, and I even go back to years ago, the famous segment on Monday Night Raw with him and Kevin Nash. I think he's not. People look at him and they kind of think who the hell he is almost. Whereas Brock, I think you look at Brock, okay, he had the college wrestling background. He came into WWE right away. He walked out on his own terms, went to try to play football and made a really strong effort, and then had a really great career in UFC, won the title, and came back. So I think in a way, Lesnar maybe had the respect of that locker room, and also guys didn't know him. He was in WWE the first time. Lesnar was 2 years? Literally 2 years on the nose, right? He debuted the night after WrestleMania 18 and was there till WrestleMania 20. Whereas Punk, he was in that locker room. So if I'm a Seth Rollins, I'm a Roman Reigns, I'm an Uso, I'm a Kevin Owens, I'm a Sami Zayn, I remember him. I remember him in this locker room, and maybe I didn't like him because, he has that certain persona. So, I mean, that's, the way I guess we'll have to find out. And then, conversely, I have to ask you guys, as we got about, 15 more minutes talking wrestling, we'll bring the rest of the guys on to talk football, baseball, whatever else is out there in the world in an abbreviated show. I mean, is Roma's burning in AEW? Because I feel like AEW, the drips are starting to almost kind of like drip. Am I missing something, guys, or what?
Oh, you're not missing anything, Tom, because, listen, the report came out by Dave Ventler, who's been a big AEW fan.
Oh, he is big. Is Tony Khan paying him, guys? Is he, like, on the payroll?
I don't know, but he says morale there is very low. Jericho, who's taking cheap shots at WWE since starting with AEW, thinking WWE doesn't know what they're doing. He said everyone needs to be under 6 months of Vince to have a better understanding of the business. And this is one of your leaders, your go-to guy.
Oh, he has to be the lock. I would think now he has to be. I know Sting's and Flair, the elder statesmen, but Jericho, make no mistake, he's their locker room leader. He has to be.
It is just there. It is, I think, the shit's kicking. The shit has hit the fan, and it is going everywhere.
What was that show with Schitt's Creek on TV? I kind of feel like that's like AEW, I think now. Kind of like that was a show a few years ago.
I've said this about AEW. They can put on a great 5-star match. Like, it can be one of the most entertaining matches of all time for someone who's really into wrestling. But to keep an audience engaged every single week, they have not done that. And it's been over 2 years now where they've been going.
What do you think about all this, Mr. Baltimore Kid? I mean, AEW, I feel like the drips are starting to come out of the faucet and there's a leak. You agree with that or what?
I'm going to be 100% blunt. I don't care about AEW at all. I'm not interested in anything they have going on. Outside of Adam Copeland and Christian, they have nothing compelling going on right now. Sting's getting ready to make his way out. Like we've said before, Ric Flair came back. Who the hell cares?
Flair came out on social media saying, well, maybe I should stop now. What was that about?
I saw he well, if I'm being an embarrassment to the company, maybe I should. You never should have come back.
And then Tony Khan comes out. And then did you see the follow-up? Tony Khan says, well, I'm actually not paying Flair. Like, I don't ever heard that before, fellas.
I don't know what's happening, but I was sitting there and I was thinking earlier, even at this point, who could AEW bring in that could even make a splash at this point? There's no one out there. There's no one.
I mean, why do they bring in Vince?
I would say to their base, I would say Okada. Maybe it would be Okada you'd bring in. He's a free agent next year. I don't think he'd have their base would love it. I don't think the mainstream wrestling fan would get it. That would probably be the one I would say internationally. But the one out there would be the artist formerly known as Sasha Banks. Would she make that maybe? Could she be that person for them? I mean, I don't know.
The thing is with AEW is they've really hit their demographic wrong, where they've done a great job to attract the international market, but they're a U.S.-based company, and they have really...
You can't sell tickets for their house shows. You can't... The business model has always said you have to run house shows, and AEW, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't run any. So how do you eventually... That was WCW's cluster was, you don't draw in house shows. You have to run live events, and they can't run them.
Exactly. The one thing is, I know AEW, they announced they're coming to Vancouver on May 11th, I think Saturday. SmackDown's coming here January 5th. When I got tickets for that, tickets sold out for this show right away.
What did you pay for your ticket?
I paid about $180 for 2 tickets, not floor, a little bit in the lower bowl.
So you had like a mid-level seat, you say? Mid-level?
Yeah, about a mid-level, I would say. About $180 for about that.
What was AEW's ticket going for?
AEW, they don't go on sale, I think, till next Friday. And I'll be interested to see. But this show
next Friday, you want to tell us what they go for? I'd love to know.
I will definitely tell. But this show sold out right away in the pre-sale went nuts. The show sold out. They had to release more tickets, and this was even before Roman Reigns was announced for the show.
Yeah. I don't see AEW being able to like do those things that WWE is. You gonna say something? TBK, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, again, the major factor for me is they just don't have the star power. They don't. They don't have anybody right now who I would pay money to see. I love Edge. I love the fact
they're
that
right. They're attractions. They're
yeah,
not guys that you put out
stars.
there 20 times a month. You put
No.
them out there once, twice a month. Bryan Danielson seems like inmates running in the asylum now. He's in charge, and they're finding wrestlers apparently for saying anything bad about AEW. What am I now? Back in like high school class, I can't say anything out loud, and the teacher says, if I say something, I'm going to be getting detention. I mean, that's like ridiculous. Where's the wrestlers court when you need it? Wink, wink, wink. But I mean, it just seems to me that I think what was it? Was it Bischoff or was somebody that said, maybe Randy will know, that said right now that they see AEW like WCW 2000ish right now, which is a bad sign.
Either it's getting to the point of the Impact when Hogan was running the show. They're getting to that point where they brought in Hogan and Bischoff, and that when they're running the show. But the thing is, going back to TBK point, the star, they had a star in MJF, and they fumbled him, turning him to a face.
I'm not a fan of the Adam Cole situation. This guy was the
hottest star since CM Punk, since the whole CM Punk.
I even think with Omega, I think they even, as we're talking with Randy Dillon and TBK about all things related to the world of wrestling, I even think that they got hurt a little bit with Kenny Omega back during the COVID run because he was the top guy. He had like 7 world titles he was running, and then he gets hurt. And I think, yes, MJF, they certainly tried to replace him. I think he's certainly a better draw, but I think even with Omega, they had problems. I don't feel like even Omega in this tag team with Jericho, it doesn't do anything. I would love to see Omega turn heel again and maybe take the shot at MJF. That would be where I would go.
Time I saw Omega viable when he was Don Callis, because Don Callis stirred up the crowd.
And that was COVID. That when he was the Impact champion, he was the AEW champion, he was the New Japan champion, he was the belt, he was the real belt collector. And I thought that was great with the way AEW marketed him, because they were working with all the different promotions, and it felt like, okay, Kenny Omega wrestles every week multiple places, even during a pandemic, whereas Roman comes out there like once in a blue moon. I thought that was great. I really think since then they never had that guy that I want to go out there and watch. I want to watch Omega. MJF's been good, but it's like, to me, a watered down version of how Roman's been champion.
Exactly. I would have to say, and I think that give credit to Don Callis there. He really drove that character. How he made.
Oh, Don Callis has been. I mean, he's another great talker. I mean, he was a great talker even when he was Cyrus the Virus in ECW. I mean, you're Canadian. You know, he was a legend in Canadian.
He's a legend up here.
Yeah, absolutely.
TBK, you go ahead. I know you were wanted to say something there.
No, I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a valid point at this point, but it just, I don't know. Personally, I feel like I have to bring it up. Can you guys, and I think I've said it before, but with the guys that they have now, right? You have Punk, you have Randy, you have Cody, you have Roman,
Seth.
Damian
Priest, have to throw him in because he's got the money in the bank.
Can you imagine if Bray were still here? AEW would not even be in the picture, man.
Well, they're going to be in the picture because they got the network deal.
They got Tony Khan's dad's money. Let's put it up. Without his dad's money, that company.
But you know what? Yes, I agree with you about Bray, but WWE, I don't think they treated him right though toward the end of his life either. They didn't put him on TV. They put him in that stupid. Randy and I were on the and I tried the Mountain Dew drink and the Pitch Black match originally again. Yes, I agree with you. On theory, we'll never know. To me, it's almost like a we'll never know moment.
Sure.
But I definitely think that WWE has to figure out what they're going to do in terms of Punk moving forward. And let me get to a few comments. I want to say hello to my buddy Ace Reed out there in Australia. It's 2:34 their time. Our friend TBK here says Punk put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Yeah, I think that's kind of the conversation topic tonight, is that Punk is back. Okay, maybe we missed our shot, but he's going to have to do a lot, I think, to earn that trusted locker. That's why I'm saying, can this last? Sting deserves his retirement. Yeah, I mean, spend a minute on Sting.
Not against Flair. Just not against Flair.
But that's what I'm wondering. Like, okay, so, I'll spend a few minutes on this before, we move on into the final thoughts. I mean, but like, who, if it's not Flair, right, who would be the opponent for Sting? I mean, I would have an obvious one. Darby Allin?
Darby.
Yeah, it has to be him.
The big heel turn. You want to give him something to talk about? have the apprentice go against the master, big heel turn. That's about it.
I haven't. I'm with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Or have Jericho, because those two in their career never met.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's one of those two. You can't do it against Flair. Edge doesn't make sense. Maybe Christian, because those two did have history and Impact.
Yeah, but they're feuding now. I feel like, to me, if they're gonna go, I mean, I don't know. Edge doesn't. I agree with you. Copeland doesn't make sense. Christian, they've been feuding with him for a while with Sting. Doesn't make any sense. Swerve Strickland, not going to happen. That happened in the summer. I mean, to me, Darby's the one that makes sense, because he would get in wrestling. Don't you always want to give the classic rub to the next guy? I mean, wouldn't that make sense? Darby's the guy that has been kind of on the edge of being a top guy. This would crystallize him, the final match of Sting's career. If they're going to go Flair, this is 2000 WCW booking. I mean,
if you want the highlight for the week, if you're AEW right now, you're trying to take the attention off of CM Punk being back in WWE.
I agree with that.
Like I said, go for the big heel turn. That if you want your blip on the radar,
I just think if they go Flair, if they go Flair because of the stupid drink that the Woo drink and because of the money they're getting, I just feel like we saw that 20 years ago. Yeah. Flair is 75 almost, Sting 65. What are we getting? Almost like the old age home match? I mean, that reminds me of, real quick, that reminds me of, you remember the Nitro years ago? You probably go see it on Peacock or the WWE Network, where they're in the old folks home. It was, I think, Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, then Scott Hall when he was drunk, obviously, in rehab. They all came out and they were wearing like the nursing home garb. That's really the match you get between Sting and Flair. Come on. It's almost
we got the match 11 years ago on, I think 12 years ago on Impact. And
exactly. And the final match of Nitro, the final match of Nitro was Sting and Flair. So you're going to tell me if they go it, I mean, I would rather see Sting and Jeff Jarrett one more time than Flair. Because at least with Jarrett, there's history there. But I mean, to me, it has to be Darby. It has to be Darby Allin. There's nobody, because I don't think there's anybody else that would make Sting look or cover up his certainly things he can't do, because he's obviously limited, right? He's 64. Mm-hmm. So to me, the opponent that knows him best right now, these past two to 3 years, would be Darby Allin. I just don't think anybody would work. Flair.
The thing with Darby is Darby has shown he has a reckless history in matches. He put caught to the wing, and for someone like Sting, who had the neck injury, who really had to be with that one spot with Seth back in 2015.
Yeah, for the title. Yep, for the title match.
So that's the only thing where, if it's not Darby for that reason, they have to, like I said, it has to be Darby deserves it, but if they're...
I mean, I guess you could say, Jericho... theoretically, you could. I don't think the angle's there. Copeland, it's like the same. Yeah, it doesn't jump.
I would say Jarrett might be your best bet then.
Yeah,
I think Jarrett and Sting have a lot of history. That's what, and I think Jarrett knows Sting, and he could pull off an okay match. I'd be okay. I don't think he would have the draw, though. You want to say something, TBK?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really think it's so much that Darby deserves it as much as Sting deserves. Sting deserves to go out looking strong. He deserves a strong match. And I think, obviously, Darby can deliver that. I understand exactly what you were saying. You want to protect Sting at all costs with the pre-existing injury, but if this is his last go around the sun, the guy that he's been with week in, week out, the guy that
3 years almost
been pushing, it's right there.
It's 100%. I 1,000%. I
1,000%
agree with you. And the lovely Xena almost choked when I talked about the incident on Nitro where it was Flair, Piper, it was Scott Hall in the nursing home. Yeah, it was a funny moment. I think for whatever reason, and I thought as a kid it would never actually happen in real life, but it seems like with Flair, we're actually going to get that. But Flair did always say he wanted to die in the ring, so I guess he may get his wish.
I don't think AEW wants to be in the headline that. I don't think they want to be in the headline that reason to say Rick. Like, we all remember the Owen Hart situation, how tragic it was. How much everyone said, like, I don't know.
Flair is.
We don't need to see Flair having a heart attack in the middle of the ring.
He said it though. He said he still wants to wrestle. He said Ric Flair said he still wants to go out there and compete. I don't know why after what he's been through in his age, but we see it. Unfortunately, time and time again, people don't know how to quit. Darby deserves it. Yeah, I agree. Booking wise, Flair wouldn't make any sense. Yeah, it doesn't because we saw it already like a million times. You know what I'm saying? Like we saw it already. Like,
I can just see the headline. One last woo.
They might want listen. I guess you could say AEW is on TBS. They're on TNT. That is certainly the home of Flair country and the old NWA, Mid South, WCW crowds. Maybe you pull in like some of the old school casual, like my buddy Anthony Finkel wrestling fans or Steve Saperstein wrestling fans who, watch once in a blue moon and they see Flair. Maybe they want to watch it. But to me, I don't really think there's any benefit in that because there's too many negatives or too many minuses that could go wrong in that situation. Even the match at Starrcade he had last year against Jarrett and Lethal with Andrade, really wasn't that great of a match. And Flair even said himself that he was dehydrated going into the match. He didn't drink enough water. He made a mistake. So who knows what'll happen there. So before I get to closing thoughts and move on to the second part of the show with the other guys on the show, whoever's left, anything else you guys want to say wrestling related that we should know about before we move on?
Wrestling related, there is a rumor Andrea's contract is coming up with AEW, and he will not resign. And he's leaning not to resign.
Where does he leave? Where does that leave him? Because is he not married or is he divorced these days?
Apparently, they said him and Charlotte Flair got separated after a year. But there was rumors saying Triple H and Stephanie McMahon.
Boy, that would be an awkward, that would be an awkward work situation, right? I just got divorced and I'm going to come back to the company where I have to see the woman that I divorced. That's got to be a really weird situation. I would not recommend that to anybody, but we're in the wrestling world. As my guest earlier on the show, Jimmy Controversy, the legendary deathmatch wrestler, basically said, well, the wrestling world, Tom, is full of carnies. So, I guess that would certainly be the case, I suppose. But Andrade, coming back to a company where his ex-wife is, that's certainly interesting, I suppose.
But I think if they the promotion in Mexico, I think that's the one.
Okay, that would make more sense. I think Jericho, I heard his contract is up in the end of 24, right? Is the end of 24 I heard about Jericho and MJF's contract we spoke about. Then we've heard other guys, Drew McIntyre, where his situation with Punk and
Drew McIntyre is interesting because he's getting this amazing push and his contract.
And what about AJ Styles? We haven't seen him now. What's his deal?
No clue.
Right now they don't have. I think he's cleared, but they don't know what to do with him right now. They don't know where to put him in.
Well, if I'm AJ Styles, then that would be my cue not to go to AEW because everybody else that goes to AEW, they don't know what to do with them. So I think that'll be interesting. And the other note that I saw real quick was actually, ironically, speaking of Impact Wrestling, TNA, they signed a streaming agreement with Endeavor. I thought that was I guess hell really has froze over. Right? CM Punk is back in WWE and Impact technically in some form is, I guess, with WWE, I guess. So that's kind of hell is frozen over there. So I guess, we'll have to see more content is added. And I also saw Deonna Purrazzo is no longer with Impact Wrestling. So maybe she's on her way to WWE. So some interesting stuff. NXT pay-per-view tomorrow as well. So a lot going on out there. We'll definitely cover it on next week's show. Good to be back with you fellas. Obviously enjoy the Santa hat, and Randy's always got the belt because he's our champion, and TBK is our jolly old analyst here as well. So guys, I'm going to give you the floor before I bring on the other components to the show on Sportswire to here with us. But anything you guys want to say, any closing thoughts, floor is yours. Be my guest.
Just always great to be back, Tom. I'll quickly touch note on the NHL quickly. The San Jose Sharks last night came back 4-0 down. I don't think people thought that was going to happen.
They came back against the Islanders earlier this week, who seem to have trouble blowing 3-goal leads this year.
Exactly. The New Jersey Devils, their offense has really picked it up.
Picking back up. Yep,
the race in the Metro isn't crazy, but the two teams to talk about, the Florida Panthers, not much of people talk about a really great season they're having with a lot of injuries on the back line.
Opposite of last year, where last year they basically struggled to make the playoffs. We basically were talking about them as the big bust. And then this year they've gotten off to the start they had 2 years prior.
And then lastly, the LA Kings, they made an NHL record winning 10 road games in regulation. First 10 games, they have had an amazing season and not much talk about them. And listen, I said they were a dark horse going to the playoffs.
How about the Detroit Red Wings, by the way? Our old buddy Neil Villapiano spoke Red Wings on his podcast on sportswireradio.org, and they're in the top 3 in the Atlantic Division right now.
Exactly. So a lot of things going around in hockey, and the race in the East. Listen, it's exciting, especially in the Metro. You blink and the seats change.
It's funny for all the, and I'll get to the Islanders. Lane Lambert's line was, well, I've gotten points in 9 of my last 10 games. Meanwhile, you lost 7 of those games, but you still got points in them.
Blown leads. That's the sad thing about that.
Well, and a bunch of them too, by the way. I think there was, of the 7 losses in those 10 games, like 4 of them were multi-goal leads. So, it's going to add up. Yes, you're getting points, but, you are where you are. So good stuff with that. Obviously, in the East, we'll certainly see the Metro is just stacked right now because you got, obviously, the Capitals have played well so far. Devils have picked it back up. Pittsburgh looks like they're finally going to fall off.
They lost a big game today, and then the Flyers. Yep. Who would have thought of that?
Well, the Pittsburgh, a lot of question marks there. Obviously, the Avalanche are back on top there. Certainly, you've got Dallas back in there. The Coyotes have played very well. Also, by the way, finally getting a new building. It looks like they're getting a new building, Randy. We spoke about that 2.5 years ago in Sportswire. Are they going to finally get a building? And it looks like they're going to get that. Golden Knights are back to where they usually are, and the Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers are right now looking like in a lot of trouble. We spoke about that last month on the show as well, and TBK.
They've turned the table, but they still have some ways to go.
They got a lot of work cut out for them, especially to crack the top 3 in the Pacific, and even just in a wild card in the Western Conference. In the East, it's a little bit more doable, but right now Edmonton, and this was supposed to be a team issue. I was supposed to win the Stanley Cup or be right
my
up there.
prediction. I look.
You might want to scratch that one off, Randy. You might want to go find somebody else if you can. But we'll come back to you and plug you in a second. But TBK, anything else you want to say? Any other closing thoughts before we move on for the night?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, thank you for having me back on. Good to see you guys as always. Just not so much thoughts as curiosities being piqued on what they decide to do. Obviously, as we said, with Randy coming back, with CM Punk coming back, where did they choose to take these guys? Did they choose to try to jump them to the front of the line with the title picture? Because in my mind, that kind of rubs a couple guys the wrong way. There's a couple guys right off the top of the head that I can think of that have been obviously putting in work week after week, pay-per-view after pay-per-view, that deserve those shots right now. But
yeah, it's a good point, because you think about, what about Priest? What about Dirty Dom? What about Drew McIntyre? You mentioned, Kevin Owens. We saw that contentious situation. Sure. It's a real domino effect there with Punk and Orton. Very big domino effect.
I think the Rumble's going to tell a lot. I'm very excited for the Rumble, and hopefully all this isn't for naught. Hopefully WWE, gets this one right, because these returns, the momentum is huge right now.
Especially now that we're going into Mania season.
Yeah.
We're going into it. So now we're going into all that. Now this is like prime time. Right now you're in the middle of the season. So now you got to figure out, how do you connect this? Because again, you didn't expect. And also can't forget about Sammy. Yeah, I mean, Sammy's another guy, but I think really because of Punk and Orton back, that really could jig those parts. And I think the last point real quick, and I want everybody to follow Randy Dillon on Instagram, Twitter, TBK. Check him out. It's xx.tbk.92, I think, on Instagram. Yep. So check you out on Instagram as well. As that. Who would have thought that Randy Orton would be looked at as almost like the gentleman, beloved statesman in the locker room? You would have asked me that question even 4 years ago during COVID. I would have said, no way. Randy Orton being beloved in that locker room. And now it seems to be that way. And Punk has come back, and it's kind of like, I don't know, really interesting work there. So we'll have to see. I'm looking forward to next week. Good to be back with you, gentlemen. More wrestling coverage, of course. We'll be back on Sportswire tomorrow with Resurrection Internet Champion, Mr. D'Angelo Flame. And I also want to wish a happy birthday to my buddy, Mr. Robert Pearson, the bone shaker himself of Chaos Conspiracy. One half of Chaos Conspiracy is going to be on the show Sunday night, 6 o'clock, with his tag team partner, Mr. Jacob Cassidy. We're going to talk all things DBW, dominating breakout wrestling on YouTube, dominating backyard wrestling on Facebook, and DBW wrestling on Twitter as well. I also want to wish a very, very good happy birthday as well to my good friend, Mr. Painmaker, Joshua Allen. Last week was his birthday. I just want to make sure I wish him as well. And happy birthday to Mr. Pearson tomorrow. And also, we'll have more coverage with you guys next week. So thank you, fellas. And looking forward to being with you guys here next week on the air and talking SmackDown, AEW, and NXT, and who knows what else in WWE.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
All right, that was Mr. TBK and Mr. Randy Dillon. Randy is also here for the host of the Hockey Fan Chat on Sportswire Radio. We are now waiting for the rest of the guys here on Sportswire Radio to come on. In the meantime, while we do that, if you want to check us out, we are on YouTube at Sportswire Radio 6579 backspace streams. We are also here on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on sportswireradio.org. So definitely check us out if you like wrestling, if you like sports, if you like all things related here to the world of sports. We have it anytime, anywhere else. If you want to play your own music, if you want to have your own podcast scheduled, I do that for you almost anytime, as I am the man that runs the station. So I engineer all this stuff, I produce it, I put it all together. So it's certainly free of charge. So you don't have to do anything but just bring your hard hitting analysis. Or if you play music, you like to do that, you can definitely do that here with us on the show. So we're waiting for a couple of the guys here on Sportswire Radio to talk all the latest happenings here in the world of sports. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station. I'll be back again tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern time with Resurrection Pro Wrestling Internet Champion D'Angelo LaFlame. Sunday, 6 o'clock, I'll be here with Mr. Robert Pearson and Jacob Cassidy. They are the team of Chaos Conspiracy. They're going to talk all things DBW. And I am joined here by one individual here. He is the host of the Liftoff Jets, the Talking Rivals. And he is also talking all things related to the world of baseball, football, you name it. And his name is Mr. Chris Bizea. Chris, how you doing? Happy Friday, my friend.
Good. What's going on, Tom?
I'm doing great. Obviously, want to talk some baseball, talk some football in a second. But I got to ask you on a lighter note. So how was the Kiss shows last week? Because everybody's saying one thing, another thing, and there's Kiss avatars out there that they're going to do. So I was watching some of the pay-per-view last week before I went on the air, and I got to ask you, so how was the final Kiss shows?
Well, I'm being a fan like for as long as I have been, for my whole life, basically. Me and my brother,
I saw
we've
your
been
brother
to
was there
over
with you. Yep.
20 shows, either 25, close to 30 shows. I have to say the first one, the Friday night show, felt more like the last show more than the Saturday night show. Kind of weird. Saturday night felt like it was kind of like just a normal, like going through the routine, the normal set list, no real feeling like we're done, and even at the end, it wasn't, they didn't come back out and, grab the mic and just say, thank you for 50 years of supporting us and making us who we are and, all that kind of stuff. Nothing, and then to go to the avatars at the end. I don't know if you've seen that.
I did. I actually mentioned it. That's why I had to ask you real quick because I realized the Brute Force Brad Weiss has obviously disappeared. He's on another planet because he's doing high school basketball. So I mean, he's certainly Hollywood. Or as Justin Gianelli, hope he feels better. Rob Maraska will be back, I'm sure, one day down the road. So I had to ask you for a fun note here. I mean, because I saw the Kiss avatars and I'm like, really? I mean, I know Gene sells the coffins, the Kiss coffins, and I kind of like Kiss. That's why I wanted to ask you because I was like, the Kiss avatars. I mean, I don't even know how that's going to work almost.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I was looking at my brother. We're shocked. And think about it. Most Kiss fans are older now. You know what I mean? So seeing an avatar and having to do something on their phone to get it.
I just would have liked to. I know there's a lot of personal issues with Ace and Peter Criss.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have at least seen them come out and play, I don't know, Rock and Roll all night, or at least play something, Strutter, whatever, just something. I would have liked to have seen that. I just, that's my one gripe. And we'll get to sports in a second. But, my one gripe with some of these bands, like Van Halen, they never played with Sammy and David Lee Roth. Obviously Eddie, God rest his soul, they didn't get together again. They didn't play at the original. Even now, they're doing this, I guess 2/4 Van Halen, or 1 1/4, because Sammy's really not an original member. And, Alex Van Halen's not taking a part of it. David Lee Roth is not going to be a part of it. I look at some of these bands and I'm like, I would have liked to have, at least as the music fan, not even a Kiss fan, just like to see Ace and Peter come out one more time, especially on the Garden. Kiss is from New York City. And I would have liked to have seen, Rock and Roll All Night, Strutter, Got It. They'll just do something, a couple songs.
Just one or two, exactly. I would have loved to have seen, like Peter Criss perform Beth because
exactly.
They had Eric Singer perform Beth. He did all right, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, Tommy
nice.
Day is a great guitarist, but I'm like, I don't. No, they're phenomenal. Listen, the musicianship, I would never take away the musicianship to play those songs and to go up there in that material. But I just would have liked to. That's all my random thought. I just wanted to see what you thought about the shows.
Listen, most fans, I think every fan would have agreed with you, but I think their relationship has gone so far, have grown so far apart, and there's so many.
I even was listening to an interview real quick about that. Paul and Gene, like Paul said something. Might have been at the beginning when they restarted the tour, because obviously this was supposed to happen during COVID, and the kind of things, understandably so, got extended and such because of the pandemic and the lockdowns and shows out of the air. But and TBK is going to give me a comment in a second about that, so thank you for that. But I think Paul even was saying that he didn't even really like. They had a relationship, but it's like they don't really. It's not what you think it is. He said something along the lines of that with him and Gene, which I thought was fascinating. You think Paul and Gene, they've been on the same side for 50 plus years, and Paul came out and said, "Well, yeah, he's my brother," but it's like almost like it's an impersonal relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more personal than that, but it's probably not as close as a brotherly relationship.
Yeah, I think that's
somebody you've known for 50 years. Like if you have a friend that you've known since you were a kid, you're going to be like super tight with him,
Absolutely. No, listen, absolutely. I mean, me and Finkel, we're super tight.
I mean, this is more of I mean, it's a business relationship, obviously, and it probably grew to more than that. They were at each other's weddings, stuff like that. Yeah,
sure. I would imagine.
Not like a normal relationship you would have. A friendship that you would have with somebody you've known for 40 years.
Yeah, I just, disappointed in that. But TBK wants to say the avatars are a bit disingenuous to the fans. Instead of making the fans truly happy, egos just couldn't be put aside to give the fans a true last experience with the OG live. And I agree with you. Look, to me, I would, even if it was one show, have them come out.
One song. I would have been okay with one song. Just rock and roll night at the end.
I mean, it's just something, just something to go out to, like, even like Judas Priest is coming back, and there was some things said, KK Downing was saying things like, I'm available. And listen, Priest, I heard the Priest songs, they're great. The new 2 Priest songs are phenomenal. But the point is, like, these bands, while they're alive, how much more is left? I would say want to go out there, and to me, I would have liked to have seen Paul, and obviously Peter, Ace, Paul, Gene, and Peter one more time go out there and perform something. And TBK also wants to say Ace went on the record to say, I simply wasn't asked. I mean,
and I wasn't, I'll be honest, as much as we wanted it to happen, every fan, we kind of knew that it wasn't going to happen because their relationships are that far apart, for so long now that they just, there's no turning back. So I knew there was like next to 0% chance that they were going to come back. I mean, I was holding out hope and saying, oh man, I hope that last show they do something special, and they did nothing special. It was just like a regular. If you've seen them,
I watched some of the
papers. It would have been the same show.
I watched some of the
list.
I mean, I wasn't there like you, but I was watching some of it on TV because I have a special way to get all this stuff for free of charge. And, I was watching it and I was like, there was no like energy. There was no like, like that oomph that, like you're thinking
more energy
like,
from the fans, I have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
We were having a great time. Me and my brother had a great time. Everybody was having a great time.
Mind if I ask, where were you sitting? Were you up at the nosebleeds in the garden, or where were you sitting?
No, we were about halfway up. We were at 208, I think.
I know 208. Okay,
so it's like almost. I wouldn't say directly centered. Straight back.
Like center left, right? Like center
a little
left?
bit. Center to the right.
Okay,
just a little bit, like maybe 1 or 2 sections away from center.
And it looked like they sold out the venues. I was watching.
Yeah, it was sold out both nights. It was great. I mean, listen, even at the end, they could have did a video of, like one of those little crappy YouTube videos where they thank the fans, where it's a video. And even like, they didn't even acknowledge the previous members. Forget about Ace and Peter.
Bruce
they didn't say anything about Eric Carr.
Bruce
what I mean? And he died. I mean, it's not like they had a bad relationship. The poor guy died. You know, they didn't say anything about Vinnie Vincent. We know how.
Well, Vinnie Vincent,
he's out there, right? He's out there.
Is his name Vinnie Vincent or is it like Viola Vincent?
I don't know. It's
I mean, I was listening to some interview a few years ago. I think it was Eddie Trunk, and they were saying, well, he may not be Vinnie Vincent anymore. I'm like, well, okay, that's enough. That's enough for me.
That's okay. He's out there. He definitely lost his mind or whatever, but.
Yeah, I agree with you. There definitely should have been more to the people that contribute to help the band. But these bands, it's like they go out, like Motley Crue just went out there, and Mick Mars not in Motley Crue, and they're fighting. Like I said, I mentioned the Van Halen situation. Okay, Guns N' Roses is back, but that's obviously a cash grab. AC/DC had problems with Brian Johnson. It's these bands. It's like. Yeah. It's like a weird situation. Pantera's back. I don't know if it's Pantera to me or not. I was just watching.
I'll be at that show too. That's in February.
Okay. So. Yeah, and then they're playing May because I was watching SmackDown. They're doing this Sonic Trip festival.
Okay.
And Pantera's headlining the bill. Judas Priest is on it. Slipknot's on the bill, and I was like, okay, is it really Pantera? I'm like, I mean,
it's only two of them left.
And when one of the four was alive, he hated one of the members who was the singer. Right. So I mean, it's
right.
But obviously money talks and everything else works. But obviously we got that out of the way. So I obviously it's just me and you. So I'll do a few picks with you. I'll get to the Jets in a little while, but I got to ask you about baseball, and I want to ask you a couple things. I want to first of all ask you, Shohei Ohtani. What is going on with Shohei Ohtani? Because I hear 1 minute he's a Blue Jay, then I hear he's not. I mean, I got to ask. Rob Maraska was going to come on here and talk baseball, and I was thinking about talking baseball. Then he kind of made it easy for me because it's just me and you. So I will talk baseball for a little bit. I mean, what is going on with Shohei Ohtani? Where is he going? And what do you make of all this? You're going to talk about obviously on Monday for us.
I don't know. You know what? They're trying to keep it, they're trying to keep all the negotiations close to the vest. Like they don't want it to be leaking out anywhere. So they wanted to keep it as close as possible to the chest without any numbers being leaked out or that. So today, obviously, there was big rumors about him flying to Toronto. He was going to be there.
I was listening to MLB Network this morning, and they were actually, it was yesterday and today. I was listening to it on my way back home at about 7 o'clock in the morning when Steve Phillips and Xavier Scruggs come on. And they were saying, it was really deep with Ohtani in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did this come from? Toronto and Ohtani. I didn't really see the connection. The Dodgers was what everybody was talking about.
Yeah, that was the obvious one. And the Cubs we heard. And back to the Angels too. I mean, people are kind of not looking at that as a possibility, but I think it's a very good possibility.
But what does it happen now? Go to the Blue Jays, and it's almost like it was announced as a done deal. How does it look for them? Because, the guys were talking about that this morning. Toronto has basically said they're going to try and they've courted him heavily. And if they don't get him, it's a team that, you look at them the last 4 years, they made the playoffs 3 times, but have no playoff wins.
Right.
So, what does it mean for them if they don't wind up getting him? I'd just be curious what you think on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious too. It's like, where do they go from here? Because they do need another bat in that lineup. I mean, those guys, we were talking about it all season.
Yeah, Guerrero did not have the season that.
Yeah, I mean, Bichette is pretty solid. He had a really good season. Yep. Defensively, he's not always, always great, but that's a team that's always missing something.
I know it's either pitching or it's hitting for them.
Right, and they usually have a lot of talent on that team. It's just that they can't put it together. They were like the Padres this year, and the Blue Jays the last couple of years have had the talent. I think they could use obviously anybody could use Ohtani, but they definitely need a left-handed bat in that lineup. So to me, it's a perfect fit there. And you would think, going to Toronto, he could basically own the country because, it's different than playing down here. I mean, it's the only team up there. So
they were making the point, and obviously you and Patrick are going to cover it. I was listening to you talk this week, and obviously Soto, you spoke a lot about, and I'll get to Soto in a few minutes, but I guess the guys were making the point that, guys don't necessarily, Steve Phillips was talking about this firsthand because he was obviously the Mets general manager and he was the one that acquired Mike Piazza. And he was saying, guys didn't want to come to New York because of the pressure or the environment, but somebody like an Ohtani might want to come to Toronto because you're not just playing for Toronto, you're playing for a whole country. Do you buy that as somebody who covers this stuff as an analyst?
I could see that too. Yeah. I mean, he's used to playing in Japan. He's played for Japan in the WBC. So I could see him wanting to do that. Sure. Like up there, he's not sharing the country with any other, player. I mean, he is,
Sure.
he'll be Canadian baseball up there, basically, right? He'll be the face of a whole country. So yeah, maybe that's what he'd want. Listen, I'm sure if the money is right, he's going to go up there. I don't think he's going to shy away from living up there. But I could also see him staying in the, with the Angels, because they were talking about like how he likes to be, like he likes how his life is there now. Right. And Trout obviously loves it there too, because he signed a long-term deal and they're not winning. You know what I mean? So, and he could
they had
say,
Trout and him, and they have nothing to show for. I mean, not even a playoff appearance. I mean, it's really in 6 years they had 2 winning seasons or 1 winning season in the last
something
6 years.
Like that,
it's really like
Trout's played in 3 playoff games now, I think, in his career.
Yeah, I think in 2014, right? 2014 he played
like
in one. 2012, I want to say, maybe like 3.
It's sad because these are like the 2 of the best players of the past 10 years, and they're hardly ever on TV because they play late at night, right? Because their games are on the West Coast, number one. So even if they are on TV, half the fans are probably sleeping while their games are on. And number 2, their teams usually are not good. So they're usually not on like the Sunday night game or, a big game during the week, because they're just not a good team. So
no,
ESPN has to go back to, all right, let's put the Yankees Red Sox back on instead of
I think we're going to be
putting,
I tell you what, it's a great segue, because I think we're going to be putting the Yankees on a lot more. Not to say that they haven't been on, because they've obviously still been a playoff team. I know it's no World Series since 2009, but Juan Soto comes to the Yankees. The Yankees do give a lot, but the Yankees, I have a feeling they're not done. And I'm curious on what you think, because they also got Alex Verdugo and a rare Red Sox-Yankees trade. You and Patrick were talking about this. I mean, it's not too often I could think of in my lifetime. I know I'm not intelligent in a lot of things. My lovely lady friend out there in Brooklyn, Miss Zena, can certainly vouch for that. But I mean, not too many times I can ever think of. I try to make people laugh. Not too many times I could think of that the Yankees and the Red Sox have really ever made a trade, and this is kind of one that Cashman said he was looking at for a while. So it seems like the Yankees are having the offseason that the fan base is kind of clamoring for. But what do you think so far?
Absolutely. When they first got Verdugo, I thought, what, he might be used for, in the package to get Soto or someone else, right? But listen, they got Soto. The way I look at it, the 4 guys that they gave up, they're not top end, talent. They're all not, or the 5 guys, including Higgy, the backup catcher. He's just a backup catcher. But the 4 pitchers, I don't think any of them are going to be ace pitchers. Michael King, he's got a chance at maybe being a number 2 if he could stay healthy. I think he has that kind of stuff. He's not going to be an ace. The other guys, Drew Thorpe, if you read, I think it's Keith Law was on the Athletic basically breaking down each one. He's basically saying Drew Thorpe's going to be a mid-rotation starter at best. And then the other guys, Brito, we've seen enough of him last year where, all right, he's not going to be much. Maybe
Steve,
a bullpen guy.
Tell me what you think on this. Steve Phillips made a point, which I hadn't thought of. And obviously, again, I'm not in that spot. I'm just a little old Johnny come lately, right? And he said that, sometimes you have to give up something to get something. And when you have the chance, you got to do it. And he made the point that, a lot of people don't talk about the fact when I acquired Mike Piazza, I gave up A.J. Burnett. And A.J. Burnett obviously had, a very good career.
Yeah.
He played for the Yankees, obviously pitched for the Marlins, the Blue Jays. He had a very good career, and he was the top prospect that the Mets had. The Mets obviously at that moment, were a struggling franchise. But he made that point, you have to give up something to get them. Do you buy into that, obviously?
100%, yeah. I mean, that's you got to. How else are you going to get Juan Soto in a trade, right? You got to give up something. And I think they, they gave up a good amount. I'm not putting down those players, but to get Juan Soto and you're not giving up your top prospect or any of your top prospects.
I agree
guys
with
in the
you.
top 15.
I think you got to do it because you know what?
Yeah.
And I agree with Xavier Scruggs this morning. And I was listening to a lot of baseball talk. And TBK, I'll get a comment to you in a second. I want to say also, my lovely friend Zena has a Yankees comment because she's a Yankees fan. So she's on your side this time. But I mean, the point is that, I think the Yankees have to be the Yankees again. Not to say the Yankees haven't been the Yankees. They've certainly they re-signed Garrett Cole. They brought in Rendon. They re-signed Judge. Sure, yes, the Yankees have been there. But I think that Xavier Scruggs was right this morning. The Yankees have to be the Yankees. The Yankees have not been the Yankees.
Right.
You agree with that? You buy into that?
Absolutely. Last year, just look at the roster that they put out there. That wasn't a Yankee roster. That was, a team.
We were talking about it all season on Sportzwire.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately. It was unfortunately for us because,
right.
We would
not much to talk about last year.
No, last year was tough, in the summer. We hope that this year be a better. But I kind of think, the Yankees have to be the Yankees almost again.
I agree. And you know what? We're going to see it now with Yamamoto. With the Yankees and Mets,
that was my next point that I was going to.
Yeah, they're
on.
And listen, and it goes the other way with the Mets, right? Because Steve Cohen came in as the guy with the unlimited bankroll and all that. Imagine if the Yankees outbid him for Yamamoto.
Well, I'm sure and I will get to the comments in a second. But as you're aware of, Steve Cohen went to visit Mr. Yamamoto, right. And then we saw Tanaka and Matsui, I think, are doing the same thing this weekend. Right. So this is a real pitch. So I would have to think, though, by getting Soto, doesn't that give the Yankees the leg up?
I think it does. I think the Mets thought of it the other way. That they're like, oh, if they're getting Soto, that's their big fish this year. That they're not going to go for anybody else. But it's just the opposite. The Yankees need pitching.
I agree with you. I think the Yankees need another pitcher.
So I think even if they don't get Yamamoto, they're going to go after someone else.
Because you don't know what you're getting from Rodon either. You don't know what you're getting from him.
Cortez is coming back from an injury too, so you don't know what you're getting back from him. Schmidt is coming off his career most innings he's ever pitched, so you don't know what he's going to do this year.
Yeah.
So you don't know, and I think that's why Yamamoto is going to get paid a lot of money because he's got.
I was even hearing 10 years. I think I heard that.
The guy hasn't thrown a pitch in the major leagues yet, but he is 25 and he has won 3 straight Cy Youngs in their Cy Young awards. And they're scouts are saying he is the best Japanese pitcher to ever come over here. Better than Ohtani.
Because Tanaka was good. Remember Daisuke Matsuzaka years ago. Nomo was certainly the first one. There's been some good ones that have come up in there, and
definitely
Ohtani you want to throw out there, you can definitely throw him out there. But that's
the guy from the Mets, Senga. I think he's really good.
Very good. Well, I think the point, and I will get to the comments in a second. Is that you got Senga. Senga was his throwing partner, I think, Yamamoto. Yeah, and they were saying that maybe that helps the Mets get a leg up.
It doesn't hurt them. I think it's going to come down to money. Right? Listen, if the Mets say,
I want to come back to Soto in a second, but I want to get to a couple things here. TBK wants to say, curious about what you guys' thoughts are on the opinions of the Orioles coming under new ownership. Huge. And they also signed Craig Kimbrell to a 1-year, $13 million deal, which I thought was a nice little small move. What do you think about the Orioles?
With the Orioles, that's going to play that's going to be a huge difference for the Orioles. They're going to spend money now. They're going to have an ownership that's going to spend money. So maybe not this year because it's going to take a while for it to get through. But I think you're going to see changes even throughout the season. Maybe they'll start trading guys, but definitely next offseason.
They got to change ownership. It was so bad there. They fired the announcer. Remember the announcer?
Yeah, remember the announcer.
What a joke. Listen, what a joke. You can't. You
got to let people. Man is happy with those owners.
So. He was on the show with them. We spoke about it on prior Sportswire shows. So the Orioles should be the Orioles because I'm old enough to remember the Orioles spending big on free agents. I think the Orioles spent Albert Bell. They signed. I mean, they were used to get.
In the '90s, they had some good teams. They just ran into unfortunately the Yankees.
Pretty much. They had a couple of teams there. Yep. So I think Craig Kimbrell is a good move and. Also, Phillies re-signed Aaronola. What do you think on the Phillies offseason so far?
Yeah, I thought that was, and I thought they got him for a pretty good deal. So it was almost like a hometown discount for him. So I think he wanted to stay there. I thought they definitely needed to bring him back because pitching, obviously, you never have enough pitching, and they definitely didn't have enough. So I like Nola. I think they got to get another piece for their bullpen, but Phillies, Philly's going to be right up there with them, the Braves. The Mets are going to make moves, obviously. It's going to, big moves.
The Mets signed Severino. That was their big move. I know they made another move.
Yeah, I think they're still going to make. If they don't get Yamamoto, I think they'll be in the market for someone else. Maybe Snell.
I was actually you actually read my mind, which is obviously interesting.
I would stay away from him, but
I was going to ask you that. What do you think about it? Because it was an interesting point that I don't know if it was Bobby Tats and Donald Stewart, obviously our Pinstripe Chronicle guys on the show, or maybe it was somebody else that made it. It wasn't you and Patrick, but that Blake Snell, outside of the 2 Cy Young years, has never won more than 8 games.
That might have been Patrick and myself on us, because we were talking about it. He's only had those 2 good years.
Yeah, and I was listening to you. Yeah, I was listening to on the station, so maybe it was you guys. And
and in those 2 years, he threw his most innings he ever throws is, I think, 180 innings.
Yeah, I think you did say that. Yeah.
Other than that, he never. Yeah, other than that, he's never won double figure in wins. I think 7 or 8 was his
8
highs
wins
outside of those 2 seasons.
Yeah, 8
so
wins
yeah, I'm staying away from him. If I'm the Yankees, if they don't get Yamamoto, I'd rather see them maybe trade for Burns from Milwaukee if they can, or try to bring back Montgomery, something like that.
Montgomery's a name I've heard out there. Yeah, that's a name I've heard out there. I mean, so but the Mets, though, do you see Snell? I don't see it personally. I don't see Snell going to the Mets.
I think they need pitching. Obviously, that they need more than, because they just got Sanger. I mean, who else you got in your rotation right now?
Carrasco.
You know what I mean? So the Mets got to get somebody. So I think they should go after Montgomery. Montgomery's pitched in New York, so that's obviously not a problem for him. I would definitely go for him. I mean, Severino, you just don't know what you're going to get. Unfortunately, the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of the guys in our Sportswire group. I think it was Billy McInerney. Justin was talking about. I kind of Severino. I would have stayed away from Severino. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a 1-year deal, right? But I mean,
it was for a lot of money for a 1-year deal. I thought.
I know it was more than.
Was it 13 million or something?
Yeah, I think it was 13 million. I saw. I mean, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think that, again, I think Snell, 31, he certainly had an amazing second half of the season. Where do you think, with Soto now, obviously going back with the Yankees aren't done. I'm curious. Obviously, we're going to see Judge and Soto together. That's going to be an interesting situation. So with the Yankees and Soto, they have to re-sign him to a long-term deal. So what do you make of that situation? Because he's still going to walk, no? So what do you think happens there with Soto and the Yankees?
Well, remember, he turned down, $440, I think, from the Nationals. When they tried to sign him?
I think we were speaking about that on the show in 21. A bunch of us were on the air live.
Yeah. He turned down a lot of money. I think this move by the Yankees is showing you that they have confidence that they're going to sign him. They might be saying stuff like, we're playing for this year. And they are playing for this year. But in the back of their mind, they're saying, okay, we didn't give up all those guys.
But I would feel like if you I know it's the Yankees, but I feel like you let him walk. You can't let him walk.
No, you can't. So I look at it this way. When you're when a player is a free agent, right? A team brings him in, they kind of show him around town. They take him out to eat. They show him where they could live. And, the training facility, all that crap.
Me what I do with my lady friend Zena. I have to take her out of town. I have to take her out somewhere nice. I have to buy her a Maramid. I have to, do all those things she wants. I get that.
I look at it this way. The Yankees have like a season-long free agent kind of visit with Soto. They have a whole year to kind of say, listen, this is New York. This is, the greatest franchise in sports. And you're playing for the Yankees. You could have your number retired. Blah, 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 blah. Is this
different than Aaron Judge, or is this similar to Aaron Judge?
What, the signing, you mean?
In terms of okay, remember last year on the show, we were talking about Judge. Well, is he going to stay? And people speculated.
Oh, right.
So this situation with Soto, where do you see this being in terms of similar, different? How do you see this in terms of how this unfolds? That's my question to you.
I think it depends on how he plays throughout the season, right? I mean, imagine halfway through the season and he's not having that great of a season. I don't think there's going to be as much pressure for the Yankees to keep him, right? If he's having a normal Soto year, his usual one of the best hitters in baseball,
and 400 OBP,
and the fans are cheering him every night, and all that. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure to sign him, and his price tag is just going to go up. But if he's having a bad year, if he has one bad game, the fans are going to start booing him, right? So
it's different in San Diego, right? They're sleeping half the time, but here,
I hope not. But
I think Steve Phillips used the line 525 was the price tag they were looking at with Soto. 525 million. I think that was the number they were looking at, because he said
10 years.
Yeah, he was saying, because he said, well, he said, think about it. He said he turned down 440, and he's 25. So he said if you do the math, he could even get himself into 13 years in like five in the at low point 525. And I
Right.
thought about that. Yeah, because he's basically like he could sign a contract and have a long-term deal basically until he's 39, 40. And then, Yankee fans were saying they were calling up and they said, well, you don't want to get into a Miguel Cabrera situation where you're basically like paying for like 4 years, but
you don't care.
Exactly. I was going to say
about the last couple of years. Did you think the Yankees care about Judge? In his year 8 and 9 or 7, 8, and 9,
no,
they don't care about that.
Give me one World Series, I'm going to forget about it.
And
exactly.
I think having Judge and Cole in their primes right now is the main reason why they went out and got Soto, because you don't want to waste these years.
Yeah, and I was talking with Chris Bizzea. Chris is also the host of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals. You can follow Chris at CP7NY on all platforms. You'll check him out here on sportswireradio.org via the Listen Live button. Chris does a great job for us. We have a Liftoff Jet show, which we're going to play this week, because I'm live a few times. I'm going to use Chris as kind of my rest into my next segment. So I want to appreciate Chris for all his work for Sportswire. He has been one of my signature shows on the brand. I listen to Chris all times of the day when I'm up, when I'm not up, and people are calling me. I've got all these people around the world that call me, 5,000 people, but I've got always the Talking Rivals with the Liftoff Jets in the background. So I really want to thank you for your hard work and growing the Sportswire brand.
I appreciate everything you do for us as well. Thank you.
The check is in the mail. But the point is that I think that the Yankees, you almost have to. I think you get the one World Series. I don't really care, honestly. If you give me the one win, because you haven't won since 2009.
Right.
I take the one win any day.
Think about the A-Rod deal, right? We got A-Rod. He did win one World Series, so it wasn't that bad, even though the ending got really ugly, right?
I still think the A-Rod deal, certainly compared to the Pujols and the Cabrera deal, I know we spoke about that on prior shows. I still think by and large it was a good contract. I mean, obviously, certainly the end was really bizarre. I mean,
the Pujols contract was awful with the Angels, right?
Oh my God!
I mean, he did nothing, and he not that he was bad, but compared to Pujols, he was bad.
I mean, Pujols, he had what? Maybe he did knock in 100 runs a year, but he was like nowhere near the player with the Cardinals. With the Cardinals, he might have been the greatest hitter I've ever seen in my life.
Right, exactly. He went from that to a good hitter.
Yeah, he was like almost like how can I put it? Like a 250 hitter, 260 hitter, struck out a lot. He was like. Yeah, he was good, but he was not with the Cardinals. He was a generational player. He was on par with Bonds.
Right.
He was on par with Ted Williams. You want to throw out there Hank Aaron, Stan Musial.
And you know what? If a fan only seen him for the years that he was with the Angels,
I'm disappointed.
He would never think about, he's going to hit 700 home runs.
No way.
He ended up with 700 because of what he did with the Cardinals. Those first 10 years, whatever they were.
You were like,
to me, just ridiculous.
Oh my God! With the Cardinals, watching him play, he was the one guy I would make sure, my brothers and I would make sure we're doing nothing. Right? I would even make sure I'm doing nothing that day to watch his four at bats. I mean, but the point is, I don't think the A-Rod contract was bad. I'm curious, real quick. I know I'm talking a lot about baseball. We'll get to football in a second. Where does this leave guys like a Cody Bellinger, for example? Everybody was talking about him, and he redeemed himself. Obviously, MVP a few years ago, and really fell off, but had. A really nice year, but where are these like lower tier free agents? Where does that leave them? Josh Hader, I think, is still out there, right? Those different names, like, where does that leave them in this whole, situations?
Maybe they're waiting for the Ohtani deal to go through, but I mean, I look at Hader. Hader's really the best closer out there in free agents. So
no question.
So he should get a good deal from some team.
And he's still young, right? Isn't he like 30 or 31? Something like that?
I mean, his numbers are starting to go down every year. The last, I think, 3 years, his K rate has gone down.
The has gone down. Yeah.
Walk rate's going up. That kind of those kind of numbers. But he's still like really good. So if you need a closer,
absolutely, absolutely. And then JD Martinez. I mean, that's a name you hear about every year.
He'll probably sign later on. After everybody signed. Bellinger should go. Because he's the best hitter available after Ohtani and now Soto.
An interesting name. Obviously, Eduardo Rodriguez signed with the D-backs. I thought that was a really interesting move. They had, I think, $80 million for 4 years. That was a nice move. And then
that's not bad at all. And he could slide in as the 3.
Yeah, they got a deep rotation now. And the other name that the guys were throwing out there, a guy who has power but kind of maybe under the radar, but still a big name. Jorge Soler, that's an interesting name that, comes up, and, he had 36 home runs this year. That was a name guys, were kind of bandying about.
The guy I like a lot, and I keep on telling Patrick, I wouldn't mind if I was the Red Sox, Teoscar Hernandez. I always liked him.
I heard you guys talk
about
big
that home run guy.
That would be another guy. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Red Sox, it kind of leaves them. We'll see where they go out there. So there are a lot of lower tier free agents. Obviously,
you're the Met fan. Well, what are the Mets gonna do now? Like, what's their? If I know Yamamoto's their number one option, but what's number two after that?
It's a good question because I look at the Mets and I'm not sure this is going. Obviously Rob Moroska's Mr. Met and he's not here.
Right, yeah.
Dustin is 6. They would have been, certainly making a stronger case, but I don't know where this franchise is going. They're kind of at a crossroads. Last year they paired Verlander with obviously Scherzer. DeGrom leaves, and you give up obviously both because they're veterans, but you bring in Senga. But this year, I don't know where the Mets go. I think it's an interesting question. The Mets, Snell, you're not really hearing much about. You brought in Severino. Right. I mean, you brought him in, I guess, to be a middle of the rotation guy. I mean, I don't know where the Mets go. I mean, you got this whole situation with Pete Alonso. You have to figure out what are you going to do with Pete Alonso.
Right.
He's looming. So, I mean,
do you think they end up signing him, extending him, or?
Well, they better sign him because the Mets have never had a first baseman like him with the power that he gives. I mean, so I think that's a fascinating question. People say, well, Ohtani, maybe he'll go to the Mets. Fat chance. I don't see that at this point. I really don't see that, even though I know, Steve Cohen has made the pitch. Yeah, I think the Mets, I would like to see them improve the bullpen. I think I'd like to get them to see another starting pitcher. I think the lineup still needs to improve. I think the Mets have a lot of holes. I got to be honest with you. Asking me objectively, I think when it comes to the bigger tier free agents, I think that the Mets are not the destination right now because it's a team that is not ready to win the World Series next year. I don't see that necessarily being that case almost more or less. That's kind of where I see it from. And the other free agent that I think a lot of people would talk about, and I will get to football in a second because I want to talk to you a lot about football for the remaining time that I have, was that the Reds signed Yermo Candelario, a guy who had a really kind of under the radar year. What did you make of that? Because the Reds kind of actually made some moves this offseason. They kind of really seem like maybe they're an under-the-radar go-for. Guy had, I think, a 260 average, 22 home runs, 70 RBIs, had almost a 480 slugging percentage. And the Reds got off to a horrible start last year and, we're right there in the playoff mix. I know it's an under-the-radar one, but, kind of winging it here. What did you make of that move?
I don't know. I thought it was – I mean, he's a good player, and I just thought it was interesting because the Reds have the infielders. Right. They have the guys there. So I think, now they could use one of those pieces maybe to get a pitcher,
You're moving De La Cruz somewhere. Obviously, there was the big guy they brought up this year.
Yeah, he was great. I think they got a lot of good young players on that team. Votto is still out there. He's probably done.
Votto, I think it's, if he's going somewhere, I would think minor league deal at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, listen, the Reds are definitely a team to watch this year. And I think just in that division, who's really sticking out? I know the Cubs. We always hear the Cubs are going to look. Yeah, the Cardinals got better pitching wise.
Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee, you think takes a step back? You think a little bit Milwaukee with them?
Possibly. I mean, they were talking about they might trade Burns. They're big time ace. So are they rebuilding? I just think that division is just wide open. There's no real clear cut.
Cincinnati's an interesting one to me because you brought in Nick Martinez, you signed Emilio Pagan, and you mentioned India, you mentioned De La Cruz, you mentioned Marte. The lineup was really good last year. They had a very strong last 3.5 months of the season. They just missed the playoffs, and it's a division. Like you said, it's okay. Council goes to the Cubs. Okay, Cubs certainly. They lose Bellinger most likely.
But they haven't done anything yet. The Cubs, right?
Yes, exactly my point. There's been faint talk about that. Who really thinks much of that? Okay, Cardinals. Do you think they bounce back? They still got some hitters. They signed Sonny Gray, who's a fascinating one. I think it's a really interesting. A lot of turmoil in the National League. The Mets you bring up, and I'm like, I still don't know the Mets' identity. The Mets, obviously new manager, new general manager, and you've got some question marks. You got a pitching staff that's got a lot of holes in it. I don't know. The Mets really have to figure out: do you go through the Japanese way? Do you go and try to get these lower tiers, free agents? That's kind of where you're looking at with the Mets.
And they're in a tough division because you got the Phillies and the
Phillies.
Braves.
And how about the Marlins? Marlins made
and
the
Marlins too, right?
Marlins made the playoffs last year, and they brought in Gabe Kapler to be the guru for scouting. I thought that was the most funniest.
Strange,
I think you chuckle about that. Yeah,
I think the only team that they're better than in that division is the Nationals.
Yeah, well,
right now, I mean, just on paper, obviously, but I think that's the only team they're better than right now because they need a ton. Like you said, there's a ton of holes there.
I think the Mets, yeah, and I think there was, McNeil took a step back. Obviously Marte was hurt most of the year. There's a lot of question marks with the team. I mean, we spoke about it here on the show with a lot of the guys, and we'll talk more about it next week. And before I go into football, my very, very lovely Zena wants to tell me that the Mets, the best things about them was Doc Gooden, and since then it's they're never going anywhere. Yeah, I mean, that's like everybody else is going to tell me. All right, whoop-de-doo, yes, but the Mets certainly have holes. I agree with you on that. She's hopeful about the Yankees because she's a Yankees fan, but we'll definitely talk more about the Yankees. I want to get into football for a little because I got a lot on my mind. I always get a lot on my mind because I got you. I'm basically going shotgun with you. So I have to ask you, I will pick a few games, but I have to talk about the New York Jets. The New York Jets.
Do we have to?
Well, I think people will like it. The listeners out there on YouTube, we have a lot of subscribers now on YouTube. We're closing in on 500 subscribers. So people, they're listening to Sportzwire. They like us on the website. So there's people out there and they're listening to us. I think generally I want to phrase this to you as well, because I'm going to listen to you and Charmin talk about this tomorrow. And so I'm going to hear your perspective when I go on. I'm live tomorrow night and I'm live Sunday night. So I'm going to definitely have you in the background while I'm preparing and listening, blah, 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 blah. But I've never seen an NFL season in my lifetime where the quarterback play has been this bad. It's almost like Rob Maraska 1947 bad when he was alive. Seriously. I mean, the Jets, this whole situation with Wilson, but every quarterback, my Steelers, obviously yesterday with Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh my God.
I mean, that was awful. Every game I watched this year, it seems like, even the quarterbacks like Josh Allen haven't been that great. Even Mahomes makes a turnover, an interception in the Green Bay game late that Mahomes never makes. I want to get to the Jets in a second, but have you ever seen, you've been watching football a little longer than me, you're a knowledgeable guy. Sharman studies this. He's an analyst, would play like a Jet. He does stuff with them. Don't give it to me in a Michael Palace way and give me some crazy pie in the sky thoughts. But have you ever seen, and I love the guy, but in all seriousness, have you ever seen the quarterback play this is bad in your lifetime covering football?
No, not at all. And you know what? It was already getting bad the last few years.
But this year, man, it's like I can't. I don't even know. It's like,
and I think this year it's just gotten worse because of the injuries. Because of how many guys are down. Right? You got Aaron Rodgers down. You got Kirk Cousins down. You got
Joe Burrow's down now.
Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson is down.
Yep.
It's and every week it seems like another guy. Trevor
but
Lawrence.
Even Jalen Hurts to me hasn't been that impressive this year.
Yeah, he has not been good either.
Josh Allen.
Games, but
Josh Allen turns the ball. He's a turnover machine. I mean, these Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G was benched by the Raiders. I mean, all these quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, let's not even go there. He's hurt anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, but like every team this year almost has a quarterback problem.
I think too, like when you look at the Jets situation with Zach Wilson, there's just so much pressure on the teams to win right away. So if they draft a quarterback, they're not sitting them for 3 years like Jordan Love
back
did
in the day. Yeah,
Rodgers.
I mean, listen, Steve Young sat for years under Joe Montana.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
so they want these guys to start right away, and it's probably not the best thing, especially for a guy like Zach Wilson, who he should have started as the 2 from game 1 when he first started. They should have had Flacco, whoever it was, the veteran, start. Not Zach Wilson, but there's pressure.
Flacco, Mike White.
Yeah. You got the owner there, like Woody. I still say Woody is the main problem with the Jets.
Well, Michael's been saying that on the shows, and we play, obviously, what we do on Sportswire is we play his kind of in his show is almost a warm up to you and Charmin. And he's been yelling on sportswireradio.org about the fact that Woody should sell the team, and that's the only way things get better. And
I don't think they're going to sell the team because they're probably making a crap load of money. So why sell it? They're having fun.
And they're not the Wilpons. They're not as bad as the Wilpons.
No.
But I mean, to me, generally, like the quarterback play this year, almost every team, maybe a few exceptions.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, I think, has been pretty good this year in Baltimore. He's been good. Even Trevor Lawrence this year, to me, has made at times to turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every team this year, Brock Purdy had the stretch where he didn't play well. Geno Smith has struggled. I mean, as crazy it sounds, you're going to kill me for saying this. Maybe Dak Prescott's been one of the more
I was going to say that myself. I was going to say Dak Prescott is probably him and a rookie, right? C.J. Stroud. That kid
was my next one. Yep.
Year.
And who the Jets
those
are
guys
facing?
Are probably the two best. I mean, yeah, I still think Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, but when you're saying,
but even Mahomes
guys have
lately
played better.
Yeah, even Mahomes, making turning the ball over late in that situation where the ball, he's got the ball. Kansas City should have won. They should have won that game. I mean, and the refereeing, I'm not going to get in there with that, but to me, like the quarterbacks in this league, this was always a quarterback-driven league. This was a league where you had elite quarterbacks, and maybe we were spoiled because Brady for a generation, Mahomes has kind of slid in there, and we had other quarterbacks kind of in. Donovan McNabb with the Eagles was great for a long time. I can go up and down. Favre certainly, would go in there. Aaron Rodgers, I have to mention, but the point, Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, obviously. But the point is like maybe we were spoiled by having so many generational quarterbacks. When I look at this season, who's been the best quarterbacks? Tua and Dak Prescott, probably. That's my two best quarterbacks this year. If I wouldn't say it,
I got to put C.J. Stroud up there.
Yeah.
And the guys that got hurt, Kirk Cousins was actually having probably his best season, right? And he got hurt. Brock Purdy's been really good.
Brock Purdy had the 3-game stretch though where he struggled. That's the only
I mean, but then again, he had a couple of injuries there. So I think Debo was out. So now that they're healthy, I mean, San Fran looks like they're the best team in the league right now. So, but injuries
they don't have home field though. They don't have home field.
Right. Not yet. You never know.
I was trying to give you a little bit of some confidence to saying, the brute force would say confidence, but I was trying to say the Eagles still technically are in that spot. So I'll come to the Jets real quick and I'll pick a few games. So then this Jets situation, I don't know. I mean, I've covered a lot of things in life. I've obviously covered a lot of college sports. I do a lot of wrestling, and wrestling's a very dog-eat-dog world. I could never imagine a wrestler saying, Tom, I don't want to go and wrestle my match because I didn't feel like going on, or I didn't want to do it, or somebody else says, I don't want to lose the match, and I know the answer because the promoter will basically throw them up. They'll be blackballed. But with Zach Wilson not wanting to start and then kind of starting, and he had to be convinced, and Rodgers calling him.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
We'll talk about that because obviously I know you and Sharma are going to for sure speak about this. So, like, you're covering this and talk to me about it. I think it's the most bizarre situation I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I just think, not defending him, but he's probably just frustrated. I mean, the guy's been benched multiple times the last 2 years now. And he's basically being scapegoated as the guy that, because of him, the Jets aren't winning and all that. So I get it. Listen, he's just not a good quarterback. And again, he's a guy that should have probably started as the number 2 quarterback from his rookie season,
I agree with
whole
you on
season. And
I agree
but
with you on that.
Again, there's just so much pressure on these guys to just come in and perform. And we got to remember too, this was supposed to be a red shirt year for him behind Rodgers.
He was supposed to learn from him. Yeah.
So listen, nothing went right this year. So I get it. He's probably he probably said to someone else like, "Oh man, I don't even want to play anymore. I'm just so done. I'm just so frustrated."
Yeah, but
and then that guy went to the press, and then we have what we got.
You can't say something like this.
No, you can't.
In New York,
in football, especially football.
Oh,
I don't want to play because I don't want to get hurt. There's 52 other guys on the roster that risk their lives basically every
and they're
game.
blocking for you. They're covering for you.
And you know what? And a lot of these guys are not getting paid what Zach Wilson is. Zach Wilson is, number 2 overall pick, so he's getting guaranteed money.
Absolutely. And to me, like, I don't think it was the right look. And I know now that I guess they're going to start him now, but like, there can't be in that locker room right now. And the Jets have been, There's been some bad Jet teams in our lifetime. 96. My first memories of football was the 1996 Jets when Staten Island's own Rich Kotite was the coach. Oof. We had obviously some interesting things at the end of Rex's run. Obviously, we just went through Gase. I mean, Gase might have actually been worse than Kotite in some ways. But like, I don't know, like how this locker room has any ability to go out and want to play and block for this kid because of how he opened his mouth. Am I wrong?
I totally agree. I 100%. That's why I'm shocked that he's even playing. Listen, I think he does give the Jets the best chance to win games because I think he's the better of the three that they have, quarterback wise. But I mean, how do you put a guy in that doesn't want to play? I know, he came back into the, into Salah's office and said, I definitely want to play. I'm in, whatever. But the cat's already out of the bag, And if you go back to last year, right? Look how quickly they supported Mike White, right? When he came in, they started wearing the Mike White shirt and all that. I mean, I just can't see him coming back after this year to the Jets. I mean, and listen, and the only reason why he's even back this year is because of Rodgers. I think if Rodgers didn't want him, and if Rodgers didn't, remember when Rodgers first came here, he was blowing smoke up, Wilson was saying he's going to be great. He's going to be here for many years as a great Jet quarterback and all this kind of stuff. I think if he didn't say all that, maybe they would have traded him. I don't know who would want him, but I mean, you've seen what the Jets think of him last year. They benched him a couple of times last year, and now they benched him again. So I don't know. We'll see this offseason. This is going to be a crazy offseason too, because even if everybody comes back, again, they're going and all in for next season now with Aaron Rodgers coming back over 40 years old.
Yeah, I was talking to my brother about this. My brother Sean Bryce, who I think was at the last two Jet games. So I kind of brought it up and I said, well, what do you think of this Rodgers situation? He's like, no, they're going to go and they're going to keep this team. They're keeping Salah. They're keeping Douglas. You're right. They should get rid of them. But what they're going to wind up doing is they're going to try to, improve it running back, improve it receiver, and see if they can get some offensive line. Is that a correct statement? Because I'm curious in what you do.
I think Connor Hughes came out today or yesterday and basically said, the word is that, everybody's coming back. And you know what? Next year, they're going to go into next year with Rodgers as the quarterback and hope in the offseason that they fix the offensive line, add a couple of weapons at wide receiver, and I
didn't think the wide receiver core was that strong this year to begin with. And
it wasn't.
What my brother was saying, Devontae Adams, they're going to try to get. That what you heard?
I heard that too. Obviously because he had the connection with Rodgers. But if anything, I would just sign a receiver. I wouldn't, because with Adams, you're probably going to have to give up some couple of good draft picks that you're going to need to rebuild this team.
And they're going to wind up this year, and we figure they'll get. Maybe they'll pick 7, something like that, 6, 7.
It's getting higher and higher. Every time they lose, it gets.
Well, let's think about it. We got Arizona,
might be top 3.
Arizona, we got Arizona, New England. Maybe would be the
New England won. Thursday. So
in Arizona, got to win last week. So you got Arizona, New England. Carolina's would be the Bears have that
right. That's number one. I think that's going to be the number one pick.
The Jets could be realistically maybe 3rd.
Yeah, because the Jets do play New England the last game of the season. So
that was my point. Yeah,
that might be for the number 3 or 2 pick.
Maybe I throw the Commanders in there, right? Because the Commanders have 4 wins also. I think.
Okay. Yeah, so they're in there. It's sad. It's sad. Only the Jets could go into a season where, we might make the Super Bowl this year. We're going to have a good team. And now we're talking about getting a top 3 draft pick by the end of the season.
Yeah, I just, I'm going to get your thoughts on a few games. I'm not going to go into too many of them in the interest because I want to actually riff upon some of these things. But, to have a season that the Jets had, and I understand that Rodgers was out, but, they should have planned. I know you guys were talking about this in the group we have on our Twitter at Sportzwire Radio. So if you're on X out there and you want to join the group, I'll let you join. We have 20 plus people in there. But I mean, how could they had to have another quarterback? They had to. I know we didn't talk about this last because I wasn't on the air last week, but they had to have another quarterback. You could not have gone into this season with the quarterback situation with a 40-year-old quarterback that could at any given moment go out there and be injured. I just think to me, that was really irresponsible. But like you said, listen, other people have said that ultimately it's Rodgers' team and they're not going to change anything. And to be fair with Salah, he didn't have a quarterback.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And you know what? We talked about it too in the offseason that they should have signed a number 2 quarterback and have Wilson as the number 3. And then even after Rodgers got hurt, they had a chance to get a couple of guys, and they just didn't. At the trade deadline, they had their chances to trade for a Joshua Dobbs or Jacoby Brissett. You know, they could have traded for one of those guys, and they didn't.
And we saw Joshua Dobbs, although he got hurt, won a couple games for the Vikings.
Yeah, he did.
Jacoby Brissett had some success in the league.
Right. I mean, those guys, I'm not saying they'd go to the playoffs, but they'd be in a lot better position to win games. I think they would be right there in the playoff race right now. But instead,
I hate to say it because I was watching a little bit of the Cleveland game, which was pitiful last week also, but against the Rams. But I would have even brought back Joe Flacco. I mean, he was awful for us. I mean, I'm just saying they had to have been something. You know, I realize it, but like, just you had to do something. I agree. I don't know, but you know, I think
Boyle and Simeon are not the answer.
Oh my God, these guys!
And that goes back to Woody Johnson, because Woody, supposedly the report that came out, I think Josina Anderson had it out there, that basically after Rodgers got hurt and they were like, all right, we got to get a quarterback, Woody Johnson was like, nope, I'm not spending any more money. What you got is what you got.
Well, you know what? I mean, that would not surprise me. That's called what they say, and they say this in the political world, they call that penny pinching. That is penny pinching. You were a real penny pincher if you did not want to sign a veteran quarterback for the league minimum or a little bit more. You were a penny pincher, and that is unfortunate. But we just have to hope that, listen, Rodgers comes back. And,
right. We're talking about an owner. How much do you think the Johnsons are worth? Right, the Johnson & Johnson company.
15 billion, 20 billion.
You're right. I mean, they couldn't sign a guy for a couple of $1 million, you know, to get them through the year.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, listen,
and maybe get a playoff game that would have probably paid off that signing.
And the Jets, you know what? I want to say one more thing. I know you told me 2 years ago on when we were doing Sunday shows, it's going to get better. But you know what? This franchise has not been in the playoffs since 2010. I mean, come on. Yeah, you know, I know the Yankees haven't won a World Series. The Yankees at least are in the playoffs, over 500. But to not in the NFL, when the league is so easier now to make the playoffs, you've got these added wild cards. You've got the NFL's become so mediocre. It's almost like the NHL, where the NHL you get rewarded for losing. You know, the NFL, it's almost a given that you could win 8 games in this league and be in the playoffs, or 9 games. And this franchise, since then, no playoffs. Come on.
No playoffs and no Super Bowl since 1969, right? With Joe Namath.
Yeah, I mean that's
embarrassing.
But that's horrible. Not even to be in the playoffs, to not even be a perennial playoff team. You know, and I know the Giants have not been in the playoffs a lot, you know, but at least their franchise has won a Super Bowl a couple times. They've had some moments, you know, like it goes back to the thing about the Yankees. You know, okay, I'll trade my one World Series for a few years of futility as I got my championship. You know, the Giants won the 4 Super Bowls. They won 86, they won it in 90, right? And they won it in 07 and 2011. They had the one Super Bowl appearance in 2000. So you had, like, you know, some success. You know, I didn't see 86 and 90, but I saw 07 and 11. I was wide awake for that. But the Jets, as a Jet fan, you got what do you got? 1 home playoff game in recent memory? 2, maybe? 2, 3 home playoff games in the last 30 years, right? 98, right? The 1 game, 02, the Colts 41-0. And I think 1 home playoff game in 09, right? But that's it. Maybe 10, one of those years. That's all you got. 3 home playoff games, maybe 1 in the 80s, I think, right? 1 home playoff game in the 80s.
No,
that's
it. Pretty sad.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a situation for
embarrassing.
Like you said, it is, and for this franchise, and for a New York franchise, it just it's horrible, and it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable.
It's abominable. And I want to pick a few games in a second. But Dina wants to remind me that it was my favorite Jets game that passed because she was making a joke, but actually the joke is on Xena because I was falling asleep. That's how bad the game was. So, which I don't sleep much to begin with. I'm like one of those, because think of like Metallica, Enter Sandman, sleep with one eye open. Usually that's like me. So in that game, I was sleeping literally with one eye open. That's how pitiful the performance was. But that was quarterback play the entire season. You know, I want to pick a few games in the interest of time. So let's pick some games for fun. I want to go with one intriguing matchup for you, Chris, the Cleveland Browns and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And before I do that here, I want to basically recap our Sportswire Radio picks league for our standings. And right now, currently, some Sportswire Radio persons in first place, never heard of him, up by 4 games over Rob Maraska. Billy McInerney is there 7 games back. We have you, Chris, 11 games back. You actually had a pretty good week last week, so you're coming on strong. We've got the brute force Bradley Weiss, who is at 94 and 96. Once again, has fallen below 500 there. So the brute force is certainly struggling. We'll see if he ever comes back to Sportswire. John Gonzalez has basically fallen off the face of the earth. He's 88 and 102, but he missed his picks last week. Picked him this week. So he's 21 games back. Justin Gianelli, unfortunately, missed that 1 week, and that's kind of cost him. He's at 86 and 104, and pretty much everybody there kind of stopped playing. So that's kind of where we are with that. So let's go back to some of these more interesting matchups. Chris, I think we're getting into flex time as well. And Ron also wants to make sure I mention the Packers. Yes, Packers.
Packers are a hot team right now.
Jordan Love, and I think they're in the last playoff spot now, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
In that cabal of teams, it's the Vikings and the Seahawks, and they're actually in that spot. So good on Ron. But, Cleveland and Jacksonville. Cleveland obviously has got some own quarterback troubles, and, Jacksonville is another team I can't quite seem to figure out at times. But Cleveland is at home here, and they're 3-point favorites. What do you make of this matchup? What do you think? It's a big game for a lot of reasons. Both teams in a playoff position. One team in Jacksonville certainly wants home field and wants to win that AFC South, and Cleveland just wants to get into the playoffs, and maybe they will because Pittsburgh probably is going to fall by default, and then that would leave the Colts and the Texans to compete with them, along with Houston and also the Denver Broncos, we'll get to. But what do you think here in this matchup, Cleveland?
Yeah, you know what? Both teams need this win. I mean, Cleveland's in the wild card right now. Yep. Jacksonville's leading their division, but if they lose another game, the Texans are going to tie them, and even the Colts are right there too. So
Colts have been, what a story, the Colts and the Texans. Who would have thought they'd both be 7-5 this year? What a story. CJ Stroud and even the Colts had their own quarterback problems, and they're still 7-5. Good on them.
Exactly. In this game, you're going to have a backup quarterback for Cleveland, whoever it might be. It's either the young kid, the rookie, or it's going to be Joe Flacco who's going to start this week. And the Jaguars, they don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to play because of the ankle injury.
With the sprain issue, yep.
Yeah, so he's going to be a game-time decision. You know what? I picked Cleveland. Cleveland, I think, was getting the 3 points.
Yep.
Right? I took Cleveland because they're home.
So did I.
And I actually took them before the game anyway, before the Trevor Lawrence injury. I just figured, their defense is going to take control of this game. And I think more so now if Trevor Lawrence, even if he does play, he's going to be not 100% because that was a pretty bad injury. So I'm going to go with Cleveland. I just think, you're giving a team 3 points at home. I'll take the 3 points.
And my one follow-up with that, and Ron wants me to pick the Packers Giants. For you, Ron, I'll pick it next. And because obviously Ron's always with us. Ron listens to all my stuff. He watches, even when I speak to deathmatch wrestlers, Rob tunes in. So Ron, Thank you for tuning in. But, I will say this, to me, Jacksonville in a cold weather environment in December.
Yeah.
I kind of think here, especially.
Are they getting the same weather as us? Cleveland, you think?
I can actually tell you right now because I actually have it right in front of me. The crack staff has given me the weather here in Cleveland, and the weather there for the forecast on Sunday is 44 and cloudy. So it's 44 and cloudy. So it's not
getting all the rain, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be. I heard like 3 inches of rain or something like that. Yeah, that's. I have a paper route, and my goal is to get at like 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So my goal is going to be like running.
Good idea.
Tomorrow. Like you ever play the old game? You'll play it. You ever play Paperboy for Nintendo?
Yeah.
That's going to be like me. Hopefully to avoid the rain.
You got the bike, so that's good.
I don't have the bike, but I've got the wagon on Sundays.
Okay.
But definitely, I'm going to pick Cleveland here in this matchup because of those same exact reasons. So yeah, 44 those Sunday. Tomorrow's supposed to rain toward the second half of the day. It's supposed to be a little bit chillier there Sunday. So we'll probably get that weather for Sunday. So that's a good one there. And then, Ron, because Ron wants us to pick it, Chris, I'm going to ask you your thoughts on the Monday night game, the Green Bay Packers against the New York Giants. And Green Bay is 6.5 point favorites here. But, it's interesting because Green Bay is hot. They've won 3 games in a row. Looked very impressive, beating Detroit on Thanksgiving. Score was not the way the game was played. Certainly got a huge win at home against Kansas City, a statement win, and the Packers are back. Here we go. And boy, bad on us with the Jets, right? Because Rodgers is hurt. Packers look like maybe they're going to go on, a run to go into the playoffs. And, Matt LaFleur, I think, has never lost in his career in December. So you've got all that momentum there. But the Giants, as crazy as it sounds, have won a couple of games in a row. And the Giants season is almost to me like a what if, because the Jets game they lost, they should have won that game. The Buffalo game, last play of the season. And you're looking at this like NFC wildcard situation, and Giants could be in a playoff spot if things broke their fate in their favor. And I'm curious on what you think, because it's 2 teams that are actually on winning streaks, and a win here by the Giants actually gets them still alive mathematically very much. But if a win here for Green Bay certainly could solidify them a wild card spot. So what do you think here in this matchup Monday night? Are you ready? 8:15 Giants, 6.5-point underdogs as Green Bay are favored by 6.5. What do you think?
Yeah, everything with the Giants, but you know what? It's a 6.5 points. Yeah, I think Green Bay could win by a touchdown. I know the Giants have kept a lot of these games close.
Giants have been good defensively. They've been good defensively all year.
But you know what? Green Bay's been playing great. Their defense is playing great. Jordan Love is starting to show that he could be the franchise quarterback there. I like Green Bay. I do. I think they're hot right now. And I think this is the game, I think, for both New York teams, that if they lose this week, I think they're probably not officially, but unofficially done for a playoff spot. But I'm going to go Green Bay. I don't trust, Tommy DeVito with the Giants. I know it's a lot of points at home, 6.5, but I'll still take Green Bay to win by a touchdown.
It's crazy. And you said that. I don't think the Giants, and I want to get to a special comment in a second, but that's actually why I picked the Giants, because I don't like the 6.5. It's too high for me. Giants defensively very good. They've been good defensively this year. Dable has not had the quarterback situation. I know, obviously, DeVito and Jones and Tyrod Taylor is a whole now quarterback controversy there. Go figure with that. But I just think the Giants play good defensively, and they're disciplined still. And, I don't know if they win the game, but I think that they can make it a game. And that's why I think Green Bay wins, but I could see one of those like 14-10 kind of games, like 17-13, one of those like typical Giant defensive, old, as Chris Berman would say, NHL Norris division, black and blue kind of game. So,
and the weather's not bad, right? I think the rain's going to be out by then.
Yeah, no, actually supposed to be in the 40s on Monday. Yeah, the forecast.
I think the Jet game is going to be a total mess.
I got to say one thing real quick on that. Why is every single Jet game this year the weather sucked? Seriously,
because it's like we have a dark cloud above us while we're playing.
Every weekend, and this is just a general. Every weekend in New York, it rains.
Yeah,
and every Jet home game rains. Like, I don't like. Is there like a curse or something? Is it like
I think so.
I don't know. I'm just meaning, for if you're out there and not in New York, just so you know, almost every weekend, the past like 20-something weekends, it's rained at least one day. And every Jet game, it's like a monsoon of a rainstorm, or the Giants, it's a monsoon of a rainstorm.
It's going to be worse on Sunday. I heard. Warm, but it's going to be rainy, windy.
Tomorrow, I'm getting out. Tomorrow, my buddy Steve
do everything you're going to do tomorrow.
Well,
Sunday, stay in.
One of my buddies, he's the big head, Steve Solanke, is Miss Zena knows. I'm hanging out with him at some point later in the day to get a bite to eat at Duffy's, and then it's supposed to be beautiful tomorrow. But then I see Sunday's rainy, and then it's supposed to be after that in the 40s. So it's going to be nice, but not for Sunday. So I do want to say hello to my buddy. First of all, the wild card, Jason Storm. I want to say hello to him out there. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I will have more coverage, and I want to congratulate Jason, because Jason's going to be in the ring next week in his first ever live indoor show for the Iowa Midwest Federation Wrestling Company. He'll be out there. It's a new change match, but I want to give Jason a big plug, and I'm rooting for him out there.
Any relation to Lance Storm?
I'm sure Jason will probably tell us he is. He might be. He's probably better. He's better looking than him. He's got more hair than him. So if that actually makes you feel
there you go.
A little bit better, but he's also got a championship. He's the OMW World Champion.
Yeah, I don't know if Lance Storm ever won one.
He technically did. He won
hardcore. He probably won.
He was a WCW US champion. He was the WCW Tag Team Champion. He was the ECW Tag Team Champion. He was a WWE Tag Team Champion. I believe he won the WWE US title. So, and also Jason, which confirmed what I figured, because he's boring. I'm not. Jason, when he's on Sportswire, is definitely not boring, and he has become one of my favorites. Some people may not like him, but he is definitely one of our favorites here at Sportswire. So definitely big shout out. Follow Jason Storm and jasonstorm.byw out there on Instagram. And Ron wants to say, we're coming alive. I'm proud of how we're doing. Well, look, Packers definitely very wide open there for sure. And, I want to get to another interesting matchup. I want to get your thoughts on Kansas City and Buffalo. 425 game. Two struggling teams right now. Kansas City's 2.5-point favorites in Arrowhead. It's been a rematch of previous playoff years. And it's almost like, this would remind me of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Almost be like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Or like, I feel like when I pick this game, I'm like, did I make the right decision? So what did you think here? Is Kansas City's 2.5-point favorites against Buffalo, but both teams are really not playing well at the moment.
Yeah, I just like Buffalo because they're coming off the bye. Figure they have the extra week to prepare for this game.
It's their season, by the way. Their season's on the line.
Exactly. So I think
they're not going anywhere.
I think they're going to play with a little more desperation than Kansas City. Kansas City, I just think, and I think Sharman and I brought it up too, is that their lack of wide receivers, any good wide receivers on that team, it's catching up to them because listen, I think teams are saying,
losing Tyreek Hill you gotta eventually catch up, no?
Right. And you know what? If you could shut down or at least kind of contain Travis Kelce, who's beating you on that team?
I don't think there's any receiver on that team that gets you 1,000 yards this year from that.
Just him. I don't think so. And you would think with,
and their running game is very, Pacheco's okay, but their running game
Pacheco is out this week.
Yeah,
too.
I was going to say, that was my next point. And he's been out and their running game's like, I don't know. I picked Kansas City only because Buffalo, to me, I feel like has played worse than Kansas City. That's the only reason why I picked, and it's an Arrowhead.
You might be right. You might be right there. I
gotta be honest with you. I'll make you feel
I don't
better.
feel good about it, but
me either. I was gonna say the same way. Like I said, this was one of these games. It reminds me of the Simpsons episode when Homer's there and in the mob, and they kind of like force him to pick, and he's kind of like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I always equate things to Simpsons episodes. That's kind of like how I felt picking this game.
Yeah.
It was Wednesday afternoon. I'm like, it's reminded me of the Simpsons episode. Like I said, where Homer was basically abducted by the mob.
Neither one is playing good. You're kind of like,
yeah, exactly. That's how
Kansas City's home, but Buffalo had the extra week.
Yeah,
so you're weighing them back and forth. I
don't like how Mahomes has played recently, and I don't like how Allen has played recently. But
watch it be a shootout, 35-30 or something.
Well, I think this CBS, I think Romo and Nance are there. I would imagine they would hope for that, right?
Yeah.
They're hoping for that. So, all right, so we'll have to see. Now, I want to go to another matchup, which I'll get to Dallas-Philly last. But another matchup I'm really curious on what you think is the Chargers and Broncos, because the Chargers have certainly, I guess, have had a really, weird season. And then you've had Denver, which had won 5 in a row, but obviously their losing streak ends. And I kind of feel like this is another elimination game here. And in this matchup here, it's another afternoon game. And it's a 425 matchup. It's this time Los Angeles is 3-point favorites. And, to me, really the loser of this game probably is looking on the outside, looking at any chances of a playoff spot, just based on all these convoluted situations. So what do you think here is the Chargers back at home? They are 3-point favorites. And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the Broncos here. The Broncos, I think overall have played much better this year than the Chargers. The Chargers, we always say it.
Chargers have lost so many close games.
They figure it out. They figure out a way to lose games. And it's just, I think that coach has to go. I think they're going to have to bring in.
Was it you that said in our group that that's where Harbaugh is going? He's not going to New Jersey. He's going to
Los Angeles. Think about it. Would you want to go to
I know our buddy Mr. Palace on Sportswire, our brethren here, has been saying we got to get Harbaugh. We got to get him. But
yeah,
I don't think he's coming.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think Michigan's going to let him go. I just like Denver. I hate to even go near the Chargers anymore because
I know they've burned us so much over the years on Sportswire. They're like, I don't know how their coach has a job.
They could win. It's crazy because they have a lot of talent on that team. Like they could be the first place team in that division.
And you know what? They're a plus 17 if I'm not mistaken. So you look at them, they're in every game, but they don't win. I've never seen a team play as poorly in close games as the Chargers. It's just really it's mind-boggling. Yeah, I mean, this was a matchup. I went with Denver also because I like Denver's defense. I think Denver has momentum still. I think they've won 5 out of 6. I think they've got something there. And I just, it's hard to trust the Chargers there in that spot. Okay, that's
I agree.
definitely, I agree with you on that. I want to go to another matchup here, which I really am curious on where you go here with Indianapolis and Cincinnati, because Indianapolis 7-5, what a season, and the Bengals, just when you thought they were dead, they won on Monday night, and they're also alive here in this cluster of teams. And it's Indianapolis is 1.5-point favorites, although Cincinnati is at home, 1:00 game. What do you think here? Certainly, Colts may be the biggest surprise in the league, and the Bengals are very much alive now in this, convoluted AFC playoff picture.
Yeah, I thought Browning was like the most improved player from a week to week.
Yeah,
jump. I mean,
did he even miss a pass in the second half last week? I think he was like 21. Yeah, no, I was gonna say
it didn't seem that way. And you know what? He's got the more weapons. Obviously, I mean, that guy's got 3 really good receivers to throw to, good running back. Mixon. So I like Cincinnati. And especially how he played last week against Jacksonville. He looked really good, and he doesn't have to do much. He just has to get the ball to those guys. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to make the tough throw.
Well, he figured it out last week. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was getting comfortable with the offense. Now you got a couple of weeks. You learned it. And, Cincinnati, I kind of agree with you. I'm waiting for this Colts team. They've really been a Cinderella. Like, I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I feel like I'm with you. I went with the Bengals because I looked at the way Browning played. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I mean, I've actually picked the Colts a lot this year, but I don't know in this spot, 1:00 game. And I don't know. To me, I like it.
I think that's going to.
Yeah. Cincy in these spots, I still, again, because of the Steelers struggling, they actually are alive. I mean, I think here the Bengals win, and the league wants the parity. They want the, mediocrity. So I'm going to say that
they got it, right? I mean, this year.
Oh my God, this year. We talked about the quarterback. Yeah. Like I said, I don't ever remember in my life the quarterback play as bad as it's been. This is I
agree. Totally
holy shnikes.
Yeah, it's great. It's really
quote
bad.
The late Chris Farley. Holy shnikes there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a couple more. I will pick the Jets, but I'm curious on where you go with San Francisco and Seattle. Seattle is definitely in a tailspin. San Francisco's red hot, 10.5-point favorite to San Francisco. Obviously, I think San Francisco clinches a playoff spot with a win here, if I'm not mistaken. So, what do you think here? Is 10.5 too high for you? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit too high. Seattle finds a way to stay in these games, right? So I think they'll stay.
Dallas, they were right there with Dallas. They should have won that game.
Yeah, I think San Fran is going to win. I don't think they're going to lose, but I think 10.5 is a lot of points to give to Seattle. Seattle's not an awful team, but listen, I think San Fran right now is the best team in the league. What they did to
Philly went into Jacksonville, week. They went into Philly last week, and
when they're healthy, when Debo's healthy, it's when you think about it, look at that offense. They got McCaffrey at running back, and then you got the receivers, you got Debo, and then you got Ayuk having a great year. Then you got George Kittle as well. Oh. So, and if Purdy just plays well, and he's been lights out himself.
I think since he came back from the bye, I agree with you. Since the bye, they've been, back to where they were. They had the 3, games, the bump in the road, fork in the road, but the last 4 weeks, I agree with you on that. That I totally agree with you on.
But I think I took Seattle. Yeah, I took Seattle just because that's a lot of points, I think, to give them. They'll stay in the game.
I took San Francisco because I always feel like I pick Seattle, and although I didn't pick them last week, but I don't know. I just in San Francisco, I just feel like I don't know. I don't trust them at all in that spot. But I normally agree with your line of thinking on the spread 10.5. So I could certainly understand it. All right, so I'm going to go 2 more games in the interest of time. Let's go to, because it's obligatory with Jet fans, is Houston and the Jets. Obviously, there's been a lot we spoke about with the Jets, and Houston needs this win here. But interestingly enough, the line dropped from 6.5 to 5.5. Now, I'm curious why that would be, but I want to know what you think here in this match. This would be another one of those matchups, man, that I would say, you know what, I'm definitely not touching that games. But I'm curious, because we're here on Sportswire. What do you think here, Houston and the Jets? Houston is 5.5-point favorites, 1:00 kickoff.
I think the reason why it went down is I think because of the weather. It's going to be so bad Sunday. So they're thinking defense, they're going to cause some turnovers, a fumble, pick, something. And I think that's what people are leaning towards. And I tend to agree. I mean, I think the Jets defense is going to cause, and the weather, I think, is going to cause the
supposed to get worse throughout the game. It's supposed to
windier and rainier. It's I feel bad for the people going. It's going to probably be an awful game. But I still think Houston's going to cover. I have zero confidence in the Jets to score any kind of points, So they might kick a field goal, maybe not even with the wind. So, and Breece Hall is out. So that kind of kills their running game. I'm going to go with Houston. They should be able to cover 5.5 points.
And TBK is back. I'll pick the Baltimore game. Then I'll pick the Dallas-Philly game. The one reason I'm going with Houston, and I continue to say this throughout the season, the New York Jets in not a single game this year has not scored more than 2 touchdowns. So that automatically tells you that how can you pick the Jets in this match? Because they haven't scored more than 2 touchdowns, especially like you said with the weather. I mean, the weather is going to be absolutely atrocious there.
Yeah.
Especially as the game goes on. And I said it before, I don't understand the weather. And it's been every week at every game. And so I will get to it. It's actually a decent matchup. I give you that, TBK. Baltimore and the Rams. Rams actually are playing pretty well. Another team I think that, they're right there. And again, you got them. It's the Vikings, the Packers, the Rams, and the Seahawks all tied at 6-6. But Baltimore certainly has been at the top of the crop in the AFC, especially in that north. And they look like they might even have some cushion room now with obviously some of those teams struggling. But they are a touchdown favorite, 1:00 spot here. Baltimore, Rams traveling. What do you think in this matchup?
Yeah, what he mentioned, the tough schedule they have left. They got after this game, they have at Jacksonville, at San Fran. Then they finish up at home against Miami and Pittsburgh. So, yeah, that's a tough schedule down the stretch. So, this is one of those games where
you got to have it.
Yeah, you got to get this one. So I'm taking Baltimore. Give me the points as well. I think they'll cover the points as well. The Rams, they've been kind of up and down, but they're in the mix for a playoff spot. But
it wouldn't shock me. I guess it wouldn't shock me if the Rams somehow made the playoffs at like 8-9 or something like that. I guess because
somebody will.
Yeah, because in the South, you're going to get one. Dallas is obviously going to have a spot. Then you've got, again, Minnesota. It leaves Minnesota, Green Bay, the Rams, and Seattle. And if you want to, I guess, throw in basically everybody but the Commanders and the Panthers are alive. But I feel like, to me, I guess if you told me there's 2 more spots, I could see the Rams maybe making it. They have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. They beat them. They got the win over the Browns. I guess you could. I don't see the Rams here in a 1:00 spot necessarily winning. These Los Angeles teams never travel well, but because the way that they've played in terms of, defensively of late, I am picking at least the Rams to cover. I think the 7, I could see it being a push because we've actually had a few push games.
Yeah.
This is one of those games in my mind that might be a push, but I definitely think Baltimore wins. But I think the weather conditions would tell me another one of those obligatory low scoring, defensive games.
Yeah.
That tells me, like 17-10, something like that.
Yeah,
so,
they're probably going to get the same weather as us, right? Baltimore?
I believe it's just about the same in between. It's raining, I think, in the 40s. So it's kind of, to me, because of where they are, I just don't think much offense. All right, so you know what? That leaves us one more game before we close. That is the Sunday night game. Boy, we got a live one here. Sunday night. A lot is on the line for you, Chris. Obviously, your Philadelphia Eagles are defending that NFC East against the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody is waiting for the Cowboys for their shoe to finally drop. Dallas, maybe they haven't played as well, and December is where they start to struggle, and everyone's been waiting for that. But other than, I'd say the Cardinals game for Dallas this year, Dallas has been pretty steady. They've been, they're able to win. They've been good offensively. They score as they always do, and I think Dak has maybe had his best year of his career so far. And obviously the Eagles, they've won, but it's not been as impressive. Certainly the Kansas City one was very good, but by and large, the Eagles, for being 10-2, are only a plus 41. Dallas, I know they've played pretty much a lot of nobodies, but they're a plus 168. Let me repeat. Dallas is a plus 160. Now, San Francisco is a plus 163. That's really the only other I could say, fair comparison that would be toward that. Miami's a plus 118. Baltimore is a plus 137.
Really because of that one game.
Yeah, the 70 plus for Miami.
Yeah,
Otherwise, Miami's probably like plus 60 maybe.
Yeah,
not as impressive, but certainly Dallas. I mean, that's quite an impressive feat there. But these teams obviously have a lot in the line. Dallas wins, they very well could actually have a rare bye into the NFC, and Philadelphia wants to have home field because we know how much that made a difference in that San Francisco game. So I'm curious for you, what's your thoughts here in this matchup? Now it's going to be in Dallas. Dallas is 3-point favorites. What's your thoughts Sunday night football, game of the week, maybe game of the season, Dallas, Philly, Dallas 3-point favorites.
Yeah, you know what? This is the type of game that the Cowboys win. And, and everybody gets on the Cowboy train going into the playoffs.
Brad Rice has been knocking them and all these people. Yep.
And then what happens? And then they lose in the playoffs. So I could see them winning this game, and I think they're going to win. Because the Eagles did not, like you said, they have not looked good. They really didn't look good last week against the 49ers. 49ers just bullied them in Philly.
Score was not as indicative as the way the game was.
I thought that was a bigger loss for them than people are realizing because it's so late in the season now. Like if it happens in September, October, it's like that.
You move on.
Yeah, like you're still kind of figuring out who you are. Things happen in the first couple of months that usually don't happen later on. That was a statement game by San Fran. And I think the Eagles got to come back and win because, like you said, this is now you're talking about for the division now, right? Because if they win, they're going to be tied. So
you don't want to be a wild card.
I still think, though, Dallas wins this game and they'll probably cover. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I think they'll win by a touchdown.
It's funny because this is the one game where you really look at, okay, Dallas these last few years has always been kind of like a pretender and they struggle in these spots. Brad and I have been speaking throughout the years, and this is where he knocks the Cowboys, and this is where they show that they're pretenders and they're the same old Cowboys. But this could be the moment on the national stage that Dallas could actually prove that, maybe they are for real this year. Maybe they are a Super Bowl contender rather than a Super Bowl pretender. And I kind of wanted to pick Philly because I did like what I saw 2 weeks ago conversely, but it's hard for me to shake off what I saw against San Francisco last week. And then coming back into Dallas, I mean, I don't know. Dallas, I know Dallas wasn't that impressive really against Washington and Seattle. They really weren't, but I think the way Dallas is moving the ball right now, I don't know if the Eagles right now defensively have seen a Dallas offense like this or any offense in the league this year. And by the way, they're scoring 388 points. They score the most points in the league. So they're scoring almost 28 a game to almost 30 a game. So obviously that's certainly why I think that they are the offense. But yeah, this could be the moment that I think Dallas shows that they're an elite team and maybe they can finally contend. But I am going with Dallas. So we'll have to see, though. Obviously, a lot to talk about in all the latest happenings in the world of the NFL. Next week, we'll talk more about some of the games. We'll talk some baseball. We'll talk about anything else on your mind. Obviously, we'll have some guys back. Justin Gianelli. Hope he feels better. He'll be back next week with us. Obviously, Rob Maraska. Stay tuned. Obviously, we hope to have him. We'll certainly figure it out. And obviously, the brute force, Brad Weiss, is certainly out there in space where he is in his mind, outer space. But that's here nor there. That was a joke. It was a joke. Just kidding. But he's obviously on a basketball court, and he's probably not with a voice, but understood. So on that note, I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? I'm looking forward to hearing more of the Talking Rivals throughout the weekend. Your Liftoff Jets I'm going to play because I'm live tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, and I'm on live Sunday night, 6 o'clock. So I'll be live a few times during these games. I'm going to play your segment before I go live and after. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. Anything else, my friend, you're welcome to share, and floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom, as always, for everything. With baseball, I'm curious what happens with Yamamoto, obviously, because I'm curious what each team does if they don't get Yamamoto. What's their plan B? Like, what are they going to, move to if they don't get Yamamoto? Because they both need pitching. Are they going to go for a Snell like we mentioned earlier? I don't know, but
yeah, Snell. I mean, you
interesting.
and Patrick said like Snell's body of work.
Yeah,
outside the 2 Cy Youngs is like
not good at all, actually. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And where does he go? What team is going to say, "Oh, I don't care. He just won the Cy Young."
what I find interesting on Snell, this Padres team was in a position totally to win. And now I look at them, I think the FanGraph winning percentage came out, and they're like in the middle of the pack. And I'm not even sure if that team's going to be in the middle of the pack next year because you're losing Soto, you're losing Snell. I think Hader you're going to lose also. So, I mean, to me, like the Padres to me have to be the most like the team in limbo because you spent all this money to win and you got nothing to show for it. Now, I guess you're going to go back to where you were before and kind of like purgatory for all those years in that division. I think that's to me really another story that I think would be curious. But yeah, Yamamoto, I don't know. I mean,
Ohtani, obviously, like, where's he going to go? Right? Like, is it going to be Toronto? Is it going to be the Dodgers? I thought the Dodgers were the favorites, but you don't know.
I just find so fascinating that a franchise that I guess apparently ownership now wants to spend. Apparently they want to win. They've got a big TV deal now there. And I guess they have a core that, they've been together now 4 years, but they've been to the playoffs 3 times, but they haven't won a playoff game. So you have to wonder,
right?
If how much is your window to win? You've got a general manager that's been there, I believe, 7 years now, and he hasn't won anything. Okay, in 16, that was Anthopoulos' team, but you've got him and Shapiro, and you have to wonder, like, you got to you got Gausman last year, no question, but you got to I think kind of make a move because if you don't, you're gonna to your base now. How do you sell that if you don't get Ohtani? I think that's going to be another.
Do they switch over to Bellinger? Is Bellinger still out there? I don't know because they do need a left-handed bat. So that
Bellinger would be good in that park, though. I think Bellinger would be a good fit in Rogers Center. He would be a good fit there. But I feel like Ohtani, you basically put yourself out there for Ohtani. It's like Yamamoto. I think if the Mets are really serious about Yamamoto, I think the pressure is definitely on them. I guess the Yankees still pressure, but you did get Soto at least. So you've got something to mark with, but I still think the Yankees need a pitcher as well. That I do agree. I think both teams need a pitcher. Yeah. I think the Yankees are a little closer to winning, though, because I look at where they are now. Baltimore obviously got Craig Kimbrell. They're going to have a young team back. Tampa, we expect to be back. Then you've got this Toronto situation. So it's going to be interesting to see. Anything else you'd like to share before we sign off for the night?
Nothing much. I mean, you know what? Monday, Patrick and I will be recording a new Talking Rivals. So we'll be, talking about everything that went on this weekend or this past week with all the moves in baseball. And Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be talking with Sharman. We'll be talking together about unfortunately, probably what's going to happen at the Jet game, but you never know. Maybe they'll surprise us.
At least you guys aren't going to the game this week.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't go for free. If someone gave me a free ticket, I wouldn't go.
It's interesting. I'll let my brother know about that because he's been going to a lot of games. I'm going to ask him when I see him tomorrow.
Good for him.
I'm going to ask him that question. I'm going to ask him to say, are you going to the Jets game? Would you go if it's a free ticket? I'm going to ask him that question. I'll tell you what he says. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Would you go for free?
Not in rain. I have to be honest, and I'm sure Ms. Zena is going to maybe she's going to laugh at this, but I would never want to sit in a football game in those conditions. In those conditions, man, I got to be honest. I loved going to the Islander games when I had the tickets. I loved going to a hockey game. I love that atmosphere, but you couldn't pay me. I don't need the money anyway. So if you actually gave me a ticket, so I don't need the money. So if you actually wanted to give me a free ticket, if it's going to be in those conditions Sunday, I would say no, thank you. I would not want to sit there, have to deal with the drive all the way out there in the boondocks to ride back and then sit there and I'm all soaking. I got to wear a poncho. No, thank you. I would not. No, I'm with you. So no, thank you. I'm not going to take the ticket. But I'll ask my brother. And Ron wants to say, have a great night, guys. Let's go Packers. And if you want to follow Chris, he's on Threads, Twitter, Instagram, CP7NY. So if you're on Threads, I'm actually posting some stuff on Sportswire. So we have some of the guys that were off Twitter, they're on Threads. So I try to post and promote things and definitely looking forward to also Talking Rivals on Twitter, Liftoff Jets on Twitter as well. and we're going to play those shows throughout the week. And I'm going to get on your show very soon in a couple of weeks. I'm going to give you a date, and I'm going to tell you in a couple of weeks, maybe after Christmas. I'm going to make that happen. I want to talk about Sportswire. I want to talk with you guys, and I want to give you guys, and I want to do something for you guys. I have it in my cap. I'll do it when I come on the show. I'll give you guys something as an announcement. But until then, I'm going to actually say follow you on all those platforms. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, the man behind Sportswire Radio. If you're on sportswireradio.org, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming. I'll be back here 9 o'clock Eastern time with D'Angelo LaFlame, and I'll be back here Sunday, 6 o'clock with Chaos Conspiracy of DBW, Jacob Cassidy, and also Mr. Robert Pearson, who's celebrating a birthday today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio.